Chapter 151. The next day, the expedition team gathered at the school gate. Zhang Xiu had offended Jin Shi and Qiu Yinru and insisted on following them. The team members didn't want to see him. As a result, Zhang Xiu was isolated. He didn't care at all. He didn't want to interact with these people anyway. He got on the school bus first and sat at the back. The rest of the people were moving their luggage and equipment. Professor Su was the team leader this time. The vice leader was the expert Chen Deshen. The two stood together and talked about something. Of course, there were students helping them carry their luggage. Professor Su said, "This time, we're going to take the train to Qinghai Province, then take the bus to Xining City, and then enter the western regions." Chen Deshen said, "The master we invited hasn't arrived yet." "Are we going directly?" Professor Su said, "You mean Li Qingji? Master Li knows feng shui and yin and yang, so he won't be restricted like us. He's already in Qinghai. When we get there, he'll appear and meet us." "Professor Su, everything's ready." "Okay, let's get on the bus." Someone sat next to Zhang Xiu. It was a senior. He didn't greet Zhang Xiu, so Zhang Xiu ignored him. They were going to the train station now. With so many people, they couldn't afford to take a plane. Moreover, the school wouldn't let the expedition team be so extravagant. Even if they had more money, the school would save it to buy equipment. "Zhang Xiu, you should be thankful that you're allowed to follow us. Why are you sitting in the bus doing nothing?" The person who spoke was a junior called Shan Duan. Zhang Xiu said, "Are you the one who gave me this trip?" "You." Another student saw Shan Duan deflated and said, "Duan, some people think they have some stinky money, so they bribe the school and put on airs here. They don't know that Xiao Liang is just a clown. As if we don't have money." Another student said with righteous indignation, "That's right. In terms of wealth, who has more than Master Jin?" Just now, Master Jin was helping someone carry their luggage. He had indeed taken Qiu Yinru's luggage. "Why are you wasting your breath on him? Once we're on the surface, don't even think about getting food or drinks from us. Let's see how he'll survive in the desert." In the distance, Jin Shi chuckled. There was no need for him to do anything. These people who wanted to curry favor with him would naturally do it. "Alright, let's not talk too much. When we are outside, the most important thing is to be united." Of course, Professor Su was aware of this problem. The expedition team had never encountered such a situation before. He was a scholar and was not very good at dealing with this kind of problem. "If Zhang Xiu doesn't want to take it, then you guys can share it more." Shan Duan said, "I'm not willing. Whoever wants to help can help." "I don't want to either." Zhang Xiu chuckled and ignored this group of people. He didn't need anything at all except for food. As for food, he planned to buy it at the edge of the western region. The things there were more suitable for the desert, and he didn't want to buy it here and bring it in. Qiu Yinru glanced at Zhang Xiu and couldn't help but shake her head. Her first impression of Zhang Xiu was that he was actually quite a good person. It was mainly because of Zhang Xiu's appearance that he had an advantage. However, after interacting with him, she found that this person was too arrogant and wild. Moreover, his methods were very evil and somewhat unorthodox. When they arrived at the train station, the group was busy again before they finally loaded all the luggage onto the train. Jin Shi was on the phone. He had always been a person who made plans before taking action. Before taking action, he would definitely investigate Zhang Xiu's background. Should he directly destroy him or deal with him in a roundabout way? On the other end of the phone said, Zhang Xiu, 17 years old, from Jiangzhou, Jiangqing City. He studied in primary school and junior high school in Dongzhou. He transferred to Jiangqing Second High School in high school and is the top scorer of the college entrance examination in Jiangnan Province. Family background. Father, Jiang Yi, is currently a county secretary in Annan County. Now it has been promoted to a county-level city. Mother, Lin Yueling, is a housewife. Jin Shi listened indifferently. So, he was just the son of a county secretary. In his remote village, he could act like a tyrant. However, in the capital, any official on the street was more powerful than his father. He was just like an ant. How dare he act so presumptuously in front of me? Then, Zhang Xiu looked over and saw Qiu Yinru handing Zhang Xiu a bag that wasn't very heavy. Zhang Xiu didn't take it. Qiu Yinru said, "Take a lighter bag and pretend to be nice. You don't want everyone to isolate you on the way, do you?" Ha, ha, ha. Would Zhang Xiu care about them? You. Seeing Zhang Xiu ignoring her good intentions and getting into the car, Qiu Yinru was furious. "What's with your attitude? When we enter the desert and there's no food or water, you'll be begging for help. Let's see who will help you then." Jin Shi's face darkened. Of course, he didn't think that Zhang Xiu really wanted to go to the ancient desert city for archaeology. This was just an excuse for Zhang Xiu. His real target was Qiu Yinru. Qiu Yinru seemed to treat this kid differently. "How dare a piece of trash like you compete with me?" Jin Shi had to admit that this kid's methods were better than his. Qiu Yinru actually took the initiative to talk to him. It took him a year and a half to do this, but this kid only took a day and a half. After Zhang Xiu got into the car, he found a seat and sat down. Most of the car was occupied by the expedition team. Seeing that no one wanted to sit with Zhang Xiu, Professor Su sat next to Zhang Xiu and said with a smile, "Little Qiu told me about your situation. She didn't mean any harm by not letting you go. This trip to the desert is very dangerous. Most people wouldn't be able to take it without experiencing a few difficult expeditions. Little Qiu was just thinking about you." Zhang Xiu smiled faintly. Professor Su said, "It's all in the past. You're also going with the team. Let's just forget about it." Haha. Little Qiu is cold on the outside but warm on the inside. Zhang Xiu naturally wouldn't take such a small matter to heart. Professor Su said, "By the way, why didn't you bring any luggage? This trip will take us a month or even longer." Zhang Xiu said, "I'll buy it when we get there." Professor Su said, "You're quite carefree. By the way, why do you insist on going this time?" Zhang Xiu said, "It's because of the hidden miracles in the ancient city." Miracles? Professor Su pondered for a moment and then asked, "Student Zhang Xiu, do you really think there are miracles in this world?" Zhang Xiu said, "Yes." Professor Su said, "There are some unexplainable scientific phenomena in this world, but to say that there are gods." He shook his head to express his doubts. "That's not very likely." "Student Zhang Xiu, why are you so sure?" Zhang Xiu really wanted to tell him that he was a god. However, the old professor wouldn't believe him even if he said that. He said, "Humans went extinct twice, and each time, there were traces of the gods. Under the ancient desert city, there are many statues of the gods." Professor Su was shocked when he heard this. "How do you know that there are many statues of the Protoss buried under the ancient city of Sahagan?" Regarding this point, it was only the speculation of the experts. As for whether it was true or not, it was the focus of their investigation this time. Zhang Xiu came to a conclusion now. Zhang Xiu said, "My friend said so. The longevity stone talisman came from there. Moreover, Xie Sanqian's home had some portraits of the ancient city. These portraits were drawn by his ancestors after they returned to the Ming dynasty. Although they weren't very accurate, the general outline shouldn't be wrong." Professor Su asked, "Does he have any evidence?" Zhang Xiu said, "Aren't we going now? When we get there, all the mysteries will be solved." Professor Su sighed and said, "It's not that easy to find. The so-called ancient city only exists in documents. No one has actually entered it. Even if someone saw it in the desert, it was from afar. It's hard to tell if it's real or fake. Our trip this time is not so much a search for secrets, but a pathfinding." Zhang Xiu said, "Didn't they say that 3 years ago, someone found it?" Professor Su said, "None of the people from 3 years ago came back. Finding it was only an official statement. No one knows the truth." As he spoke, he took out a 2-centimeter thick book. "This is all the information we can currently collect about the ancient city, as well as the various routes in the desert." "Right, have you been to the desert before?" Zhang Xiu nodded but said, I'm different from you guys. I don't have any experience that can help you. The immortal Martial Continent also had deserts. The climate there was 1,000,000 times worse than the desert on Earth. A sandstorm could tear a divine body apart. Professor Su said, What do you mean? Zhang Xiu shook his head and didn't say anything. Professor Su said, We'll go to Pinghai first. We need to pick up a very important person. Chapter 152. Zhang Xiu asked casually, Important person? What kind of important person? Professor Su said, Because the ancient city we are exploring this time is an underground tomb. This means that we are going to enter a tomb this time. Entering a tomb is different from archaeology. We have to find someone who knows the ropes. Therefore, this time, we invited a great master who knows feng shui and yin and yang. Exploring tombs was a very important part of archaeology, but it was only a part. In addition to tombs, archaeology had many other aspects, such as relics, historical sites, and secret places. In fact, archaeologists rarely went to tombs. Most of them were tomb robbers, and there were many strange things in tombs. There must be a master who knew feng shui and yin and yang in the tomb robber gang. Zhang Xiu said, Great master? What's his name? Professor Su said, Li Chengji, from the Pinghai spiritual tomb sect. According to young Master Jin, this person has a very high status in Pinghai. It cost a lot to invite him. Zhang Xiu nodded slightly. After all, they were going into the desert. The desert was hot and torturous, and the desert was too dangerous. Most people were not willing to take this risk. It seems that they did spend a lot of money. He looked at Jin Shi, who was sitting opposite Qiu Yinru and talking with a smile. This young master was really willing to spend a lot of money to get Qiu Yinru. By the way, what's the background of this young Master Jin? Professor Su was surprised. You don't know? Zhang Xiu shook his head. Professor Su couldn't help but shake his head. He dared to offend the other party without even knowing his background. Pinghai Jin Group is a famous tycoon in Pinghai. The Jin family's assets are enough to rank in the top 5 in Pinghai province. It's one of the top in the whole Hua nation. When Professor Su said this, he showed a sincere expression of surprise. Pinghai was like Jiangnan. Its economy was developing rapidly. Later, Jiangnan would catch up with Pinghai and leave it far behind. However, Pinghai province's economy was still above Jiangnan, ranking in the top 3. It was indeed amazing to rank in the top 5 in Pinghai province. However, Zhang Xiu only smiled faintly. There were many truly wealthy families in Hua Nation, and their assets were far superior to these so-called Forbes billionaires. It was just that their assets were hidden, and they did not want to be high profile. Seeing that Zhang Xiu did not seem to care, Professor Su purposely reminded him, I've also heard that the Jin family is not as simple as it seems on the surface. Although the Jin family is in Pinghai, they have deep connections in the capital. This can be seen from the fact that the first young master of the Jin family is able to mingle around in the capital. He lowered his voice and said, The Jin family is a political and financial magnate. They are the moneybags of the Zhang family. Zhang Xiu frowned and asked, Are you talking about Zhang Yishan? Professor Su nodded thoughtfully. Zhang Yishan had stayed in Pinghai before. If it was said that the Jin family and Zhang family were related, it would be reasonable. Professor Su said, Now you know the origin of this first young master of the Jin family. He is really not someone that ordinary people can afford to offend. Later, find some time and apologize to him properly. Do you understand? Zhang Xiu smiled and did not comment. Professor Su said, Young man, it is good to have pride, but you must know how to judge the situation. There are some people that you cannot offend. Not only will you ruin your own future, but you will also bring disaster to your family. At the table far away, several people took out poker cards and played with great interest. The long-distance train was very tiring. If they did not find something to do, it would be difficult to pass the time. Zhang Xiu leaned against the seat and closed his eyes. Then, he did not open them again. He did not eat, drink, or go to the bathroom for more than 10 hours. They had arrived in Pinghai. The group prepared to get off the train. Shen Duan said, "First young master of the Jin family, are you from Pinghai?" "Jin," she said, "Yes, but I grew up in the capital. My hometown is here. During the holidays, I will come back to live for a period of time. I am very familiar with the place. We will stay in Pinghai for a day or two. When the time comes, I will take you around Pinghai." "Inru, is this your first time in Pinghai?" Cho Inru nodded slightly. "Yes, this is my first time here. I wanted to come several times before, but unfortunately, I didn't manage to. This time, I finally came." Everyone took down big and small bags again. Archaeology was indeed difficult. These people were too good at carrying things. Camera equipment, exploration equipment, stairs, tents, sleeping bags, and so on. "I will help you." Jin Shi once again showed his gentlemanly demeanor. "Thank you." Everyone's heart was like a mirror. This kind of opportunity was naturally given to first young master of the Jin family. In fact, he was not the only one who had a crush on Chiu In-ru, but the others had to give way. When they left the train station, there was already a bus waiting outside. Pinghai was first young Master Jin's territory. Naturally, everything was arranged properly. The hotel they booked was a private 5-star hotel. Normally, it would not be so luxurious. However, the hotel was called Jin Luxury Hotel. It was their own hotel, so they stayed for free. Wow, I have never stayed in a 5-star hotel before. What extravagant hopes! Looking at the luxurious 5-star lobby, the girls shouted excitedly. It was too cool. "Zhang Xiu, have you stayed here before?" Shen Duan asked softly in Zhang Xiu's ear. "No." Zhang Xiu cooperated and said the answer they were hoping for. In 2008, the economy was still average. A 5-star hotel was completely different from a 5-star hotel in the future. It was truly luxurious and high-end. For many people, staying in a 5-star hotel was really quite luxurious. Shen Duan said, "So, people have to know how to be grateful, okay? If it weren't for first young Master Jin, how could we have the chance to stay in such a high-end hotel?" But Zhang Xiu didn't wait for him to finish speaking. He took the room card and left. "Look, what kind of person is that?" "That's right. Letting people like him stay here for nothing. He's really an ingrate." Little did they know that he did not really want to invite them to stay. He was just pretending. If it weren't for Chiu In-ru, would Jin Shi even care about people like you? Would he even invite you to stay in a high-end hotel? Not long after Zhang Xiu returned to the hotel, a long-awaited call came in. It was from Gu Dikang. "Hello, is this Mr. Zhang?" Zhang Xiu said, "What's the matter?" Gu Dikang said uneasily, "Originally, I didn't want to disturb Mr. Zhang, but there's no other way. Due to the poor performance of the Jingmen military region in the military competition, some of the leaders in the military region were dissatisfied. I'm facing a lot of pressure. Now that the situation has escalated, I heard that some people want me to step down." Zhang Xiu said, "Someone is adding fuel to the fire?" Gu Dikang said, "Whether it's the military or the official career, it's all the same. Once you're in a weak position, there are too many people who want you to step down. So, I wanted to ask Mr. Zhang for help." Zhang Xiu asked, "How do you want me to help you?" Gu Dikang said, "This time, the leaders who performed poorly were held accountable. It's just an excuse, but sometimes, the excuse is the key. So, I can only win it back in the military region. I want to ask Mr. Jiang to come to the military region and teach those little brats a lesson. Show the results to the headquarters as soon as possible." So it was because of this. Zhang Xiu held the title of Jingmen Military Region's chief consultant, but he hadn't gone over for 2 months. Gu Dikang was rushing him. Zhang Xiu said, "I want to enter the desert. If I'm fast, it'll take 10 days to half a month. If I'm slow, it'll take a month. If you're under too much pressure, how about this? I have a fist technique here. You can get someone to take it and pass it to your army. It should be able to increase the combat power of the soldiers by a level. Gu Dikang asked, "May I ask Mr. Jiang, what is the name of this fist technique and what level is it?" Jiang Xiu said, "Bursting Flame Fist, Demigod level. Ancient fist techniques could increase one's strength by 10 times. It was already very impressive. This was a level higher than ancient fist techniques. Didn't that mean that it could increase the combat power of the soldiers by 10 times? I'm rich." Gu Dikang was overjoyed when he heard this. "Thank you, Mr. Jiang." "Thank you, Mr. Jiang." Jiang Xiu didn't have any ordinary fist techniques, nor did he have any ancient fist techniques. He only had divine fist level techniques. However, all of his fist techniques were immortal martial arts. These warriors didn't know any techniques, so they couldn't learn immortal martial arts. Jiang Xiu removed the part of immortal martial arts, leaving only pure martial arts. Therefore, he called this bursting flame fist demigod level. There was already an ancient fist technique in the army. Now that there was a demigod level fist technique, it was really amazing. I'll send someone to get it. Chapter 153. After hanging up the phone, Jiang Xiu asked for a notebook from the hotel staff and wrote down the cultivation method of the explosive flame fist. He tried to simplify it as much as possible so that the soldiers in the military wouldn't be able to comprehend and practice it. Immortal was the core of the two words, immortal. If it was removed, the essence would be gone. If the word martial was left, there wouldn't be much power left. However, even if there wasn't much power left, it would still be far superior to ancient martial arts. After simplification, the word flame was basically gone. Originally, when the explosive flame fist was used, there would be flames everywhere. Moreover, the flames were real and contained a terrifying explosive power. Now, it could only be transformed into an explosion of qi. It was no longer appropriate to call it explosive flame fist. It was more appropriate to call it explosive fist. After writing it down, Jiang Xiu was tired from a day's train ride. He took a shower and went to bed. At this time, a military jeep was rushing to the Jinjin Marriott Hotel. The driver was Gu Dikang's personal bodyguard captain, Yan Zhen. Today's matter was very serious and could affect the fate of the entire Jingmen military region. Before leaving the military region, the chief repeatedly told him to be polite to Mr. Jiang. Yan Zhen wanted to cry in his heart. That man was like a demon god. Who would dare to be disrespectful to him? Were they tired of living? However, looking at the chief's expression, the trip to Bodhi Biogenetics must have left a shadow in his heart. That was simply an explosion in his inner world. He was completely abused to the point of doubting his life. After that day, Jiang Xiu was like a god in their hearts. There were only a dozen demigods on the demigod ranking in Huaxia. If the news that Mr. Jiang had killed Li Puti with a talisman spread, it would certainly shock the entire martial arts world of Huaxia, and even attract the attention of the whole world. Another peerless expert in Huaxia had appeared. Thinking of this, Yan Zhen's heart was filled with a natural sense of honor. He felt proud that Huaxia had a person like Jiang Luoxia. With this kind of pride and excitement, the jeep couldn't help but drive faster and faster. The Jingmen military region was stationed in Jingmen province between Jiangnan province and Pinghai province. It wasn't very far, but it was definitely not close either. There was no such thing as a short distance between two provinces in Huaxia. When he arrived at the hotel, it was already 2 in the morning. He decided to stay in the hotel for the night and look for Jiang Xiu tomorrow. Yan Zhen. Suddenly, a person called his name. Yan Zhen turned around and saw a handsome young man walking towards him with a face full of surprise. He said in astonishment, "Master Jin, why are you here?" "Jin," she said, "this hotel belongs to my family. I'm the one asking you, why are you here? Aren't you in the military?" Yan Zhen naturally couldn't tell him that he was here to carry out an SSS-level mission. "I came here to play. It's a rare day off, so I came here to play." "What are you doing?" Behind Jin Shi were several men who seemed to have something to do. Jean, she said, it's nothing serious. I just met a blind person who made things difficult for me. I was just about to teach him a lesson. Have you checked in? I'll have someone arrange a good room for you. Yen Zhen said, that's good. After the arrangements were made, Jean, she led his men upstairs to Zhang Xiu's room and rang the doorbell. One of them said, open the door, the police are checking the room. Zhang Xiu was sleeping soundly. After being woken up, he didn't think much about it. It was common for the police to check the room when staying in a hotel. Plus, with his cultivation, he wasn't afraid at all. But as soon as he opened the door, a group of people rushed in. They were all muscular, and it was obvious that they were all martial artists. Their eyes were fiercer than the other, and their gestures were as if they were going to smash the room. How were they police? They were clearly a group of bandits. Jean, she had a playful smile on his face and closed the door behind him. Zhang Xiu, I told you, you'll regret coming with us to explore. Zhang Xiu looked at this group of people with a faint smile. Jean, she said, you're very calm. Of course, you're the son of a city book after all. Plus, you even challenged the entire martial arts department in high school. Zhang Xiu frowned slightly. You investigated me? Jean, she said, not really. Before I make a move, I usually understand my opponent. Today, I'll give you a free lesson. This is called knowing yourself, and knowing your enemy is the key to winning 100 battles. Unfortunately, our master Jean only investigated Zhang Xiu. He didn't know that Zhang Xiu had another name, Zhang Luoxia. He smiled proudly. These people aren't that good at fighting. This one was the provincial boxing champion, this one was the national champion, and this one was the underground boxing champion for 18 consecutive years. Today, I specially invited you here. You're worthy of respect. Today, I'll beat you until you kneel and call me Grandpa. Jean, she said with the attitude of a victor, Ah Biao, go and practice with him. He raised his chin slightly. At this time, he was completely different from his usual polite appearance. It was as if he was a different person. How dare you go against Master Jean? You must be tired of living. The man named Ah Biao was more than 8 meters tall. The muscles on his shoulders were 2 or 3 times larger than that of an ordinary person. He rushed up and wanted to press Zhang Xiu down. Bang! Zhang Xiu raised his leg and kicked the man away. After his huge body flew out, he directly hit the door behind him. Jean, she felt Ah Biao pass in front of him with a strong gust of wind. Then, with a bang, he flew out of the room together with the door. Damn it! Jean Shi's face froze in an instant. He couldn't believe his eyes. This was a super security door. It weighed 400 pounds and was so strong that it couldn't even be broken by a car. When the other people saw the situation, they were scared out of their wits. This could be an internal force master. No, he was a transcendent master. They turned around and tried to escape, but how could they be in a hurry? Zhang Xiu grabbed their clothes. With a swoosh, the 200 strong men were thrown out like trash. They crashed into the wall at the far end, causing the wall to cave in. The roof was scattered with mud and dust. Whoosh, whoosh. Then, he threw out the other 2 people in the room. Only Jean, she was left. The latter's face was extremely ugly. He knew that Zhang Xiu was good at fighting, but he didn't expect his martial arts cultivation to be so high. You're a martial arts master? Zhang Xiu said with interest. Do you want me to break your left leg, or your right leg, or crush your head? Jean, she thought to himself, I almost died today. However, I'm very lucky. Coincidentally, a top-notch martial Dao grandmaster came to the hotel. He turned around and rushed out shouting, Brother Yen, save me. Yen Zhen was a guard. His consciousness was always on guard against sudden danger. Just now, when Jean she said that he wanted to teach someone a lesson, he paid attention to avoid accidents. And such a big movement might be nothing to others, but it was big enough for him. He rushed out of the room and rushed to the scene of the incident. Seeing Zhang Xiu walk out slowly and not in a hurry to attack him, Jean she heard footsteps. He turned his head and looked at the end of the corridor. Yan Zhen's figure had appeared. With a proud smile on his face, he provoked Zhang Xiu. Come if you have the guts. Don't you know whose territory this is? Jean, she said, Brother Yan, someone wants to hurt me. Who dares to hurt young Master Jean in Pinghai? Along with the voice, Yan Zhen rushed over like a tiger out of the cage. He was very powerful and seemed to be ready to suppress everything at any time. However, when his gaze landed on Zhang Xiu, he felt as if he had been struck by lightning. It was that demonic godlike man. When he thought of Zhang Xiu's ruthlessness and heaven-defying strength, his face instantly froze. It's him, Brother Yan. Destroy him. But Yan Zhen didn't move for a long time. He turned his head and saw Yan Zhen's pale face and trembling. Zhang Xiu said, You came to find me? Yan Zhen came back to his senses and nodded with difficulty. Yes. Because it was too late, I didn't dare to disturb Mr. Zhang, so I stayed in the hotel for the time being. I didn't know Jean she dared to offend Mr. Zhang. Mr. Zhang? Jean, she said, Brother Yan, you know him. Why are you so afraid of him? He is Mr. Zhang. Which Mr. Zhang? He had a bad feeling in his heart. Yan Zhen was not an ordinary person. He was the personal bodyguard of the military chief. He was a person who had seen the world. How could an ordinary person scare him? Yan Zhen said, Mr. Zhang from Zhongnan. Jin Shi's eyes suddenly widened. He looked at Zhang Xiu in disbelief. Chapter 154. Mr. Zhang from Zhongnan. This time, Jin Shi was really scared. He broke out in a cold sweat. He knew what kind of person Mr. Zhang from Zhongnan was. Mr. Zhang's reputation was built by rolling heads. You, how could you be Mr. Zhang? Jin Shi's voice became weak. He began to tremble at the end, and he didn't dare to look Zhang Xiu in the eye. He didn't take Zhang Xiu seriously. His father was just a county secretary, and in the eyes of the Jin family, he was like an ant. However, Mr. Zhang was a real low-level hero. It was said that the underground of Zhongnan trembled under his murderous power. He was someone who was on the same level as Gu Daji on the Zhongnan frontier and Ma Yingqiu, the tycoon of Zhongnan. How could they be compared to him? He claimed to be a young master, but many young masters had fallen on the road to becoming heroes. Even if he, Jin Shi, grew up for another 20 years, he still needed the right time, place, and people to reach Mr. Zhang's current position. In other words, Mr. Zhang's current position was what he wanted. Zhang Xiu looked at him indifferently. Since you know who I am, then you should know what happens to people who offend me. Jin Shi's face completely changed. He heard that the head of the Wang family, Wang Shuahai, was pushed off a helicopter by this person and fell to his death. Mr. Zhang, I'm a member of the Jin family. For the sake of the Jin family, please spare my life. My Jin family is backed by the Zhang family in the capital. Spare my life. Zhang Xiu said, Spare your life? Ask Yan Zhen if anyone who has offended me is still alive. Cold sweat slid down Yan Zhen's face. His face was extremely pale. No. He had never seen Zhang Xiu's ruthlessness and decisiveness. Even the chief sighed and said that he had never seen Zhang Xiu's cultivation in his life. Similarly, he had never seen such an ambitious and ruthless person. Jin, she said, I'm a direct descendant of the Jin family. If Mr. Zhang touches me today, he'll become enemies with the Jin family. One more friend means one more path. Zhang Xiu said, So you understand this principle? I thought you didn't. Since you understand, why don't you let me join the expedition team? The school has already agreed. Why do you still insist on kicking me out? Since you know, why did you bring a group of people here and beat me up until I call you Grandpa? Jin Shi's forehead was covered in cold sweat. You don't seem to like making friends either. Who makes friends like you? If I was really an ordinary person, what would happen to me? My arm would be broken? Broken leg? Jin Shi was at a loss for words. If Zhang Xiu was not Mr. Zhang, of course, he could do whatever he wanted. So, Zhang Xiu waved his hand and a force of qi came out. Crack. Jin Shi's 2 calves were broken by his fist. He fell to the ground on the spot and let out an extremely painful and miserable scream. My leg, my leg. He only dared to scream twice and stopped. He was in so much pain that he almost fainted. He had no strength to scream again and could only make a whimpering sound. Throw him out. Yes, Mr. Jiang. After Jean Shi was thrown out of the hotel, someone sent him to the hospital. His 2 broken legs needed immediate surgery. In the past, if his legs were broken like this, even if he found the best bone surgeon, he would still be lame. If he didn't take good care of his legs would be deformed. But now, science was advanced. After the surgery, he could walk normally and even have a chance to recover. But this experience was enough to make Jin Shi unforgettable for the rest of his life. Then, the boxing champions who had fainted were also thrown out. After doing this, Yan Zhan returned to Zhang Xiu's room. The door was broken, but it didn't prevent Zhang Xiu from resting. Yan Zhan knocked on the door gently. Mr. Zhang. Come in. Zhang Xiu was sitting on the sofa. There was a glass of spring water in front of the table. He picked up the notebook on the coffee table and handed it over. Explosive fist. Demigod level. The fist can't be easily pierced. Only 100 people are allowed in the army. Zhang Xiu didn't want his boxing to become a street job. No matter how powerful a martial art was, once too many people learned it, it would slowly become useless. If it was too easy to get, it wouldn't be cherished. Yan Zhan reached out his hand excitedly. He believed that he was definitely one of the 100 candidates. He was currently cultivating the ancient fist technique. Now that he could upgrade it to the demigod fist technique, his strength would increase by several times. One had to know that at his level, it was extremely difficult to increase his strength by even a little, let alone increase it by several times. He asked, Mr. Jiang, may I ask if this fist can make one a demigod? Since it was called a demigod's fist, it should be used to understand the mysteries of demigods. Zhang Xiu pondered for a moment and shook his head. No. A demigod had to be extraordinary. The immortal part of this set of boxing had been completely removed by him. When cultivated to the peak, one could reach the limit of a mortal body. Unless the cultivator had comprehended it himself, there was no way to transcend this category. The path of a demigod is not as simple as you think, Yan Zhen said. I'm thinking too much. There were only a dozen people on the demigod list in the entire China. It wasn't that easy to become a demigod, let alone pass on the army commander's boxing. Yan Zhen said, I've got the boxing. Then I'll immediately set off and return to the military to avoid any more trouble. The next day, everyone woke up and played on their own. Young Master Jean didn't appear until noon. In addition, when they called, the other party was offline. At around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Professor Su gathered everyone. The people they were waiting for had arrived. Li Chengji of the Spirit Tomb sect and his 2 sons. Li Chengji wore a black robe with one hand behind his back, holding a bead. He looked like a hawk and wolf, especially his eyes, which were very frightening. He was a natural-born eccentric. His whole person was very imposing. He might be in his 60s or 70s, but he looked like a middle-aged man. He didn't even look older than his 2 sons. Students, this is Master Li. The students shouted in unison, Master Li. Li Chengji smiled and said, Hello everyone. By the way, where's young Master Jean? He came to give face to young Master Jean, but he hadn't seen him yet. Professor Su said, I'm also puzzled. I couldn't find young Master Jean when I woke up today. Maybe something happened. Li Chengji frowned and said, Today is the day of departure. After today, the next few days will be inauspicious. Let's go first. As for young Master Jean, we'll contact him later. Feng Shui people were very particular about this. It was not a big problem to wait for young Master Jean when they reached the periphery of the desert. Besides, no one present was willing to take Jin Shi. He was just there to play, and they had to spare some energy to take care of him. Now that Master Li had spoken, they were eager. Professor Su said, "Okay, then we'll go first." On the same day, they set off for the western regions. In the hospital, Jin Su heard that his son's legs had been broken and hurried over from the capital. When he saw his son lying on the bed in a patient's clothes with his legs wrapped up, his eyes immediately turned red and he was heartbroken. He only had one son and his legs had been broken. "Who is it? Who did it?" A Jin family disciple next to him said, "It's not clear yet. We'll know when young master wakes up." "Doctor, when will my son wake up?" The doctor said, "The anesthesia wore off long ago. He should have woken up long ago. He should have fallen asleep. It's a good thing to fall asleep, but when he wakes up, he still has to suffer pain." But before he could finish, Jin Shi, who was lying on the hospital bed, groaned in pain. "Son." Hearing the familiar voice, Jin Shi opened his eyes. He looked like he was about to cry. It was not only the physical pain, but also the pain in his heart. Jin Su understood the pain in his son's heart. Who dares to do this to you?" Jin Shi said, "It's Zhang Luoxia from Zhongnan." "It's him." Jin Su was stunned for a moment. How could it be him? But then his face darkened. It's fine if he flaunts his power in Zhongnan, but he dares to provoke the Jin family. "Jin Shi, don't worry. I won't let him off easily. Tell me what's going on first." Jin Shi roughly explained. Jin Su said, "So, he should be entering the desert now. Then let him die in the desert." Jin Shi said excitedly, "Dad, what do you mean?" Jin Su said, "Gu Daji from Zhongnan has arrived. Zhongnan is a rich land." Coupled with the rapid economic development, many big shots have their eyes on that place. Zhang Luoxia has become the target of public criticism. Now is a good opportunity for us to get rid of Zhang Luoxia and enter Zhongnan. I will ask the elders to use the family's power to eliminate Zhang Luoxia. Chapter 155. Jin Shi was so shocked that he even forgot about the pain after the surgery. He couldn't help but want to sit up. Jin Su motioned for him to lie down quickly. If he moved now, it would be troublesome if the wound was affected. "Have a good rest. Dad, I want to go to the old house." The old house of the Jin family was the beginning of everything in the Jin family. It was also the holy land in the hearts of the Jin family members. Jin Shi heard this and was in awe. He watched his father walk out of the ward with firm steps. He was very excited. He thought that he would have to wait 10 or even 20 years for the humiliation yesterday. He didn't expect that he would be able to get revenge so soon. He was deeply proud to be a member of the Jin family. This was an old but well-preserved village. It looked like an ordinary village on the surface. There were people coming and going inside. Only a few people knew that this was the birthplace of the Jin family. In one of the courtyards. How dare he break the leg of a member of the Jin family? An old man smoking a pipe slammed the table angrily. He was so angry that the muscles on his face were trembling. He doesn't take the Jin family seriously. An old man in the seat of honor looked up at his grumpy brother and said, "This Zhang Luoxia is not simple. He rose to power in Zhong City and later destroyed the Wang family. He climbed step by step to the top of the underworld in Zhongnan. Some people speculate that he may be a demigod." The smoking old man said with certainty, "Impossible. If he was a demigod, the whole country would have known." The Jin family elder said, "This person became famous in a battle with the legendary Wang family's demigod, Zhang Luoxia. He defeated him. But Wang Jianji is not on the demigod list. So, everyone doubts whether Zhang Luoxia is a demigod." The smoking old man said, "What do you mean? Are you afraid?" "If you don't go, I will." The elder in the seat of honor said, "Old Six, why are you in such a hurry? I haven't finished speaking. Did I say that I would let it go? We brothers have nothing and took down the Jin family. Now that we have turned the situation around, who are we afraid of?" The old man finally felt that it was reasonable. Then what do you mean? The elder sitting at the head of the table said, It's hard to say if Zhang Luoxia is a demigod, but he's definitely a mystic realm expert. If it was just a mystic realm, us brothers would be enough to deal with him, let alone in the desert. We came from the desert, but what if he's a demigod? I know what you want to say, but let's be careful. I will go and invite Brother Mu Senior. As soon as he said that, the audience was in an uproar. Even Jin Shi's eyes widened. The old man's face also changed greatly. Third brother, is it really worth it to do this to Zhang Luoxia? Elder brother Mu Sen, aren't you overestimating that brat too much? The elder of the Jin family said, Zhang Luoxia has the potential to be the #1 person in Jiangnan's underworld. He even dares to give himself the title of a demigod. He is definitely not weak. Brother Mu Sen will also be interested. All of you, follow me. The group went out of the yard and walked into the depths of the village. Further in was the forbidden area of the Jin family. It looked no different from a village, but there was a person living inside. A young child was playing under a big tree at the entrance of the village. A group of more than 20 people came over. The leader was the elder of the Jin family. He came to the child and asked, Little boy, where is Grandpa Mu? The child pointed at a shabby old tiled house in front of them. The houses here looked like they were from the countryside in the 30s or 40s. They were all tiled and stone houses. An old man with messy hair was sitting in the middle of several children. There was also the sound of birds chirping from inside. When they came closer, they could see clearly that the old man's mouth was open. 2 birds were pecking at his teeth, cleaning the stains and rotten teeth inside. Elder brother Mu Sen. Mu Sen saw so many people coming over. His expression didn't change. He blew a breath and the 2 birds were blown away. After circling in the sky for a while, the old man called elder brother Mu Sen stretched out an arm and landed on them. So many of you came looking for me. What's the matter? The elder came back to his senses and said, The family's disciples provoked a powerful and ruthless character. This person is called Zhang Luoxia. He's suspected to be a demigod. Oh? The originally expressionless face showed some interest. He turned around and used a broken cup to rinse his mouth. It seemed that the 2 birds were helping him brush his teeth. Another bird flew over with a towel in its mouth. The elder continued, The reason why we suspect that this person is a demigod is because this person fought with Wang Jianji of the Wang family. Wang Jianji even died at his hands. Mu Sen washed his face. Wang Jianji? I met him 60 years ago. At that time, he wasn't a demigod. However, he was already on the verge of becoming one. Whether or not he broke through to the demigod realm after 60 years in the water, the person who could kill him is definitely not simple. He's worth my time. Where is Zhang Luoxia now? He's in the desert. At this time, in a small town on the edge of the desert, Jiang Xiu and his group were stopping at a market. Because they were already in a town on the edge of the desert, the wind carried the smell of sand. The passers-by were wearing headscarves. Otherwise, they would be covered in sand. Qiu Yinru was wearing a dark red headscarf, which made her skin look even whiter. She exuded an exotic aura. Everyone began to buy all kinds of desert supplies, especially water bottles. This was very important. Many people hesitated about how big they should buy. If it was too big, it wouldn't be easy to carry. If it was too small, it wouldn't hold much water. The other thing was camels. Camels weren't bought. Usually, they would buy them from the locals and then hire a guide. I still can't get through to young Master Jean. What should we do? I think we should set off now. Master Li, Expert Chen, and Professor Su were discussing. Professor Su looked around. Everyone had prepared everything. Since they couldn't get in touch with young Master Jean, they couldn't just wait. Young Master Jean has bodyguards. Even if we encounter desert bandits, we don't have to worry. But now, Expert Chen said, there were many tomb raiders in the desert, and many of them had guns. Professor Su said, Then let's follow the normal archaeological process. Go to the garrison and get 2 soldiers here. What do you think, Master Li? Master Li himself and his 2 sons were all cultivators. They were skilled and daring, so they weren't afraid. However, they didn't have enough manpower to handle such a large group of people, so he nodded and said, "Since we are the government, of course we have to use the power of the government." Professor Su took the documents to the nearby garrison. "How many camels do you need?" Shen Duan asked Chou Yin-ru. Since young Master Jean wasn't here, he seized the opportunity to get along with the beautiful girl. "In addition to 1 for each person, we also need to rent a few more to transport goods." "Yes, yes." The guide nodded. "Then let's make it 30-20. After speaking, Chou Yin-ru went to choose the most suitable one for herself. It was her first time riding a camel. She was very excited. Shen Duan pulled the guide and asked, "Which one is the worst?" "You won't be able to walk and will be at the back." The guide hurriedly waved his hand and said, "My camels are all good. None of them are bad." Shen Duan was really depressed. This person was so stupid. "I mean, give me a bad one. Do you understand?" As he said that, he took out a red card and handed it over. He wanted to deal with Zhang Xiu alone. When the time came, he would be at the back. It would be best to just leave him alone in the desert. "Aren't you arrogant? I'll let you be." "Yes, yes." In the distance, Zhang Xiu stopped in front of a stall full of herbs. He didn't think the desert could threaten him. The only thing that could hurt him was bleeding. Blood was the foundation of Protoss. Also, dehydration would make him uncomfortable. So he had to solve these 2 problems. "Is this Chenchin grass?" The seller was an old man from the western regions. He nodded and said, "Yes, 50 yuan each." No one would buy it for 50 yuan if it was placed outside. "This is 7 blood ginseng." 100 yuan. Chou Yin-ru had come to his side. She saw that Zhang Xiu didn't buy anything. He didn't even buy glasses to block sand. Instead, he was buying herbs. She couldn't help but ask, "Why are you buying these useless things?" Zhang Xiu said as he picked the herbs, "If they're useless, why would he set up a stall here?" "Humph, pretending to know when you don't know." Chapter 156. Zhang Xiu was amused. This girl was the one who came over to ask, but she said that he was pretending to know. Wasn't she contradicting herself? He picked up some ground powder and said, "This is Star Awakening grass, right? Give me some of this too." The scariest thing in the desert was severe dehydration. Not only would it affect the body's functions, but it would also cause hallucinations. It was very scary. 50 yuan for a pack. "Give me 2 packs. Being unable to walk due to dehydration and having hallucinations, it was impossible to walk out of the desert. Therefore, severe dehydration in the desert almost meant death. However, Star Awakening grass would not cause hallucinations. If one really encountered severe dehydration, Star Awakening grass would be a life-saving elixir. However, those who didn't know, such as Chou Yin-ru, who was beside Zhang Xiu, first asked curiously, "What's this powder for?" Zhang Xiu ignored Chou Yin-ru. However, the stall owner wanted to do business and said, "Buy it, buy it. It can save lives and refresh the mind. Miss, do you want 2 packs? Chou Yin-ru shook her head and said, "It's too expensive." 100 yuan for 2 packs of powder was a bit expensive. To put it bluntly, it was picking Star Awakening grass, drying it and grinding it into powder. It was a no-cost deal, but it also depended on where it was sold. The same cup of water at a roadside stall was much cheaper than at a 5-star hotel. It was even more priceless in the desert. Zhang Xiu spent more than 500 yuan on the medicinal herbs here. In addition, he bought 3 water skin bags, filled them with water, and put them into his bag. He didn't buy anything else. It could be said that he was traveling light. Zhang Xiu and Chou Yin-ru looked in the distance. A military jeep drove over, leaving behind a cloud of dust. The car drove all the way to the town hall where they were now. A soldier in a camouflage uniform and a submachine gun jumped out of the car first. Then Professor Su got out of the car. Then the driver was also in a camouflage uniform. Students, these two are the soldiers assigned to us by the garrison to ensure our safety along the way. This is Captain Lang, and this is Comrade Little Zhang. The local garrison is very supportive of our archaeological expedition this time. Captain Lang and Comrade Xiao Zhang are the best soldiers in the army and martial arts experts. Let's give him a round of applause. Pa pa pa. The students applauded excitedly. They had never seen a soldier with a submachine gun on his back. They were in awe. The two of them gave a military salute to the people present. Among them, only Li Chengji and his son, as well as Jiang Xiu, disagreed. Little Qiu, is everyone ready? Qiu Yinru took out the list and checked the number of people, then said, everyone is ready. We can set off at any time. Just like that, a professor, 3 experts, 2 warriors, 3 mages, and 18 students formed the expedition team for the ancient desert city. Alright, then let's officially set off. The mighty troop set off towards the desert. Jiang Xiu was riding on a camel. He didn't feel too good because the camel he was sitting on seemed weak and slow. However, he didn't feel too bad because the warrior called Captain Lang, who was in his early 30s, had stayed behind. With someone to cushion his back, Jiang Xiu didn't feel that he was too slow. You don't seem to fit in. Captain Lang's all-around cool was called Cold War. He had dark skin, a resolute face, and a local accent. He looked like a tough guy and didn't have much expression on his face when he spoke. They're paying for it. I'm paying for it. Captain Lang suddenly understood. I heard that the archaeological mission this time is very important. It's to find the lost ancient ruins. To be honest, I've been here since I was 16, and I've been here for almost 20 years. I've heard a lot of similar legends, and I've encountered desert tomb robbers who did everything they could to capture them. However, no one has actually seen the ancient city of Sahagan. Jiang Xiu said, then why did you follow us into the desert? Cold War said, I have to carry out the mission given by my superiors. Besides, it's also my responsibility to protect you. I don't want anything to happen to you in the desert. The weather in the desert is terrible, but the people are even more terrible. Jiang Xiu said, you mean? Cold War said, the bandits in the desert are far more fierce than those outside. The desert has become their natural protection. Some people even organize armies and build countries in the desert. They walked towards the center of the desert and reached the White Camel Peak after a day. According to ancestor Xie Sanqian's deduction, their direction was right. They kept going west. After 7 days and 7 nights in the desert, they were completely lost. In other words, they had to keep going west for the first 7 days. After that, the specific direction would depend on the materials collected by the experts to find the corresponding geographical characteristics. Unknowingly, the sky darkened. The desert's climate was harsh, and physical exhaustion was very high. They had to ensure that they had enough rest, so they didn't continue traveling as soon as the sky turned dark. Everyone rested on the spot, set up tents, and boiled water to cook. Professor Su and the others gathered together to study the map. According to the records of the Ming Dynasty, the ancient desert city is the ruins of the Protoss. Therefore, there are often strange phenomena in the sky where the ruins are located. According to the records, it doesn't rain in other places in the desert, but the ancient desert city does. There is even an underground drainage system in it. Professor Chen Deshen said. Professor Su pushed up his glasses and said, many of the folk records are exaggerated. The author likes to add his own imagination to describe it. We have to believe in science. Gods only exist in the form of faith, but they don't really exist. Professor Su was an atheist. When he talked to Jiang Xiu, he revealed this view. Chen Deshen said, why, Professor Su, do you think there is no God in this world? Professor Su smiled and shook his head. There is. An extremely determined voice sounded. Everyone looked over and saw that it was the Archmage Li Chengji. He stood up and walked over slowly. There is a God in this world. The two of you are scholars, so you might not know, but there are actually some underground forces under the surface of our world. They are a group of martial artists. You can also think of them as the underworld. The underground forces have a list called the demigod list. This is something we all know. Some of them have lived for more than 100 years, and some have even lived for more than 200 years. The professors and experts had never heard of this before, and the students were all in disbelief. Professor Su said, "Master Li, are you joking?" Li Chengji shook his head and said, "This is the truth. Those who come into contact with the higher levels of the underground forces all agree. There are 13 people on the demigod list in our country, and there are also experts from other countries. Professor Su, after this trip to the desert, if you have any doubts, you can go to Sichuan. There are many legends about gods and sword immortals in Sichuan, and there is a lot of evidence left behind. The one in Sichuan is still on the demigod list." Professor Su smiled. He did not like to argue with people. In his heart, the so-called archmage was just a trick. To put it bluntly, it was a lowly way of life. It was all a trick to deceive people. Of course, he did not deny this ability, nor did he deny his role in entering the tomb. However, in his heart he was still biased. This was the character of a scholar. "Professor, you still don't believe me?" Li Qingji said, "Professor, you have studied historical antiques and relics all your life. Haven't you found some mysterious things that science can't solve?" Professor Su said, "Of course I have. There are many things that science can't solve, but this doesn't mean that there are gods. It's just that my science and technology have not reached that level yet. In another 50 or 100 years, many of the mysteries that can't be solved now will be solved." Li Chengji said, "Controlling flames, walking on water, killing people within 100 steps. Are these also related to science?" Professor Su said, "Of course." In his opinion, there was no difference between a magician playing with fire and a magician playing with fire. He even saw a magician in a video who stayed in the water for an entire day. There were people lying flat in the void. These were nothing more than illusions. It was just that one could not solve the mystery. Once it was exposed, it was worthless. The two of them started arguing as they talked. The air was filled with confusion and the smell of gunpowder. The students and experts naturally sided with the professor. The professor said, "Master Li believes that there are gods in this world. May I ask, have you seen them?" Li Qingji said, His face froze. Gods were illusory. Even if it was a demigod, they did not dare to say that there were gods. They could only vaguely feel that there were gods. Chapter 157. There were many things that could not be concluded without seeing it with one's own eyes. Professor Su was an academic and liked to argue with people. Li Qingji said, "Believe it or not, God is there. It's just that you can't see or hear it." Professor Su said, "If God really exists in the ancient desert city, then why was it buried by the wind and sand? Logically speaking, it should have existed for a long time." Li Qingji was stumped again. In terms of eloquence, how could he not be compared to a professor? He thought for a moment and said with uncertainty, "Maybe, it moved away or encountered an external enemy." When Zhang Xiu heard this, he thought in his heart. According to Xie Sanxian, there were many huge statues in the ancient desert city. There was a god. It was not impossible for a god to resist the natural weather of the desert with the power of a god. It was not worthwhile to move. There was only one explanation for a god to give up his place. It was that he encountered an external enemy. Professor Su said, "Since it's a god, is there an enemy that he can't deal with?" Li Qingji said, "Of course there is." Ha ha ha. Professor Su laughed. "Master, you're getting more and more right. Shouldn't a god control the world and be omnipotent? How can there be an enemy that he can't deal with?" Li Qingji said, "For example, a god that is more powerful than him." Professor Su said, "Master Li, we're archaeologists, not writers. Everything has to be based on historical information and the effects given by cultural relics. We can't make wild guesses. If there was no evidence, they could say whatever they wanted, but it would lack persuasiveness. That night, everyone slept in tents with sleeping bags. It was enough to withstand the sudden drop in temperature in the desert at night. However, Zhang Xiu was the only one. He did not bring anything with him. He only took out a thin layer of cloth from his backpack and spread it on the ground. Then, he lay down on it. For Zhang Xiu, the harsh weather in the desert and the huge temperature difference between day and night did not affect him much. "Inru, why aren't you sleeping?" Feeling Qiu Inru moving around in the same tent, Xiao Yan could not help but say, "We still have to hurry tomorrow." Qiu Inru pulled open the tent flap a little and looked out through the gap. The bonfire was burning brightly. Through the light, she could see Zhang Xiu lying on the sand in the distance. If he slept like this for a night, even if he could resist the sudden drop in temperature, he would suffer a lot. He would be buried in the sand the next day. "Who asked you to be so unsociable? Now you're going to suffer." Qiu Inru said, "Inru." Xiao Yan said, "What can happen? He deserves it. Who asked him to follow us? If he wanted to follow us, so be it. He didn't even bring anything. He thinks he's a young master. Ignore him and go to sleep. If he really can't take it, he'll bow down to the professor or the male classmates." Inru Yu. Cold War came out of the tent and slowly came to where Zhang Xiu was. Seeing him lying on the sand, he said, "Come to my place." Zhang Xiu said, "It's okay. You can go to sleep." Cold War looked deeply at Zhang Xiu. The temperature was probably below 30 degrees, but Zhang Xiu was normal. It seemed that he could withstand the cold. Looking at his hands as a pillow, he seemed to be very relaxed. He nodded and returned to the tent. In his heart, he suspected that Zhang Xiu might be a martial cultivator. The night was very long, but for Zhang Xiu, it was a rare and comfortable night. The desert was huge, and he felt like he was one with the world. He held the longevity stone talisman and entered a state of cultivation. The blood in his body gradually became restless. Popping sounds were heard. This was the prelude to the awakening of the god race. The membrane in his blood was about to burst open, and the power hidden in his blood was about to break free. Boom! The membrane exploded, and Zhang Xiu felt as if his entire body had exploded. Then, it suddenly shrank back, and the divine power in his body surged. The 63rd rune was revealed. Soon, from the font, there shouldn't be many strokes left. There were only a few strokes left at the bottom, and it should be the end. When the time came, he would have a complete rune, the so-called divine talisman, and become a true god. Gods had a great advantage over immortals, and that was their bodies. In addition to strength and defense, the body also included longevity. Gods, especially those of high-level races, had an almost unlimited lifespan. Immortals, on the other hand, had to undergo tribulations to increase their lifespan. In other words, after Zhang Xiu became a true god, he would have a very long lifespan. This was something that humans could never hope to achieve. Then, he would have enough time to wait for his disciple to deliver the cultivation materials to him. He would advance by leaps and bounds, and return to the immortal martial continent. The next day, Qiu Inru was the first to wake up. When she woke up, she found that Zhang Xiu was already standing at the top of a sand dune. He had his hands behind his back, and was looking at the slowly rising sun. She was astonished. He was really fine. The members of the exploration team came out of their tents one after another. After washing up and eating breakfast, the exploration team continued their journey. 5 days later, the sun was very strong, and when it shone on the desert, smoke rose. The air was distorted, and there wasn't a bit of moisture. The exploration team walked between the sand dune with difficulty. The whole team had lost the relaxed look they had when they first set off. Many people had haggard faces, and their skin was dry. Their lips were cracked and had traces of blood. Every movement was very strenuous, and they were like sick patients. Physical exhaustion was one thing, but more importantly, it was their hearts that collapsed. The so-called Dragon Gathering Dune was the place where the Ming Dynasty army got lost. They had searched for a long time but still couldn't find it. "I'm so tired. Can we rest for a while?" The number of requests for rest increased. Professor Su, who was good at arguing with others, didn't have the strength to do so. The students couldn't sit directly on the ground. It was too hot. They had to find a shady place and let the camels rest. Li Chengji and his two sons were in a relatively better state, but they were not in a better state. They licked their lips from time to time, and they were also exhausted. The two soldiers were in a slightly better state. One of them was at the front, and the other was at the back. They were carrying submachine guns at all times. Even at a time like this, when they were too tired to even move their fingers, they were constantly vigilant. Only Zhang Xiu was as calm as when they first set off. "What kind of monster is this? Isn't he tired?" Shan Duan and the others couldn't understand. This kid's stamina was so good, even better than a soldier's. After being tortured in the desert for so many days, he was still fine. "What's that sound?" They felt the entire ground shaking, and it was getting closer and closer. There were also gunshots, and everyone was shocked. Suddenly, the entire hot sand dune area fell into a state of panic. The people who were resting on the ground quickly stood up. What happened? Beep, beep, beep. Machine gun fire. This can't be gunshots, right? Shan Duan and the other students were even more frightened. "Yes, everyone get down." The two soldiers were very familiar with the sound of gunshots. They immediately gathered in the middle with their submachine guns and shouted at everyone. The sound was getting closer. Zhang Xiu looked over and saw two people fleeing in front. It seemed to be a man and a woman. Behind them, a group of people was chasing them. It would have been fine if they had fled to other places, but they were fleeing in the direction of their group. "It's Meng Fei's gang," Xiao Zhong shouted. "Captain, what should we do?" Cold War's mind worked quickly. Their mission was to protect the safety of the exploration team, but they couldn't just leave the two people being chased by desert bandits outside. Moreover, they had already been exposed. "Do it." Cold War lowered his body and circled around the other side. Xiao Zhong circled around from the other side. The professors, experts, and students were scared out of their wits. Beep, beep, beep. The air was filled with the sound of gunshots. With a bang, the man fell to the ground. Blood poured out of his chest. "Quick, miss, quick." Before he could finish, he died on the spot. "Fourth uncle." Tears fell from the woman's eyes. She gritted her teeth, abandoned the body, and ran for her life. "It's her." Zhang Xiu was shocked. The woman was only 16 or 17 years old. She was extremely beautiful. Even in such a sorry state, it couldn't hide her beauty. It was Xie Sanqian's daughter, Xie Ting. Why is she here? Chapter 158. The number of enemies exceeded the estimation of the two soldiers. There were more than 10 of them, and they were not riding camels but horses. They were as fast as the wind, and machine guns were firing all the way. They had no choice but to roll to the side and hide behind the sand dune. In the blink of an eye, they were surrounded. Meng Fei's bandits were also surprised by the appearance of such a large group of people. The leader was a man in his 30s or 40s. He had a strong body and was very rough. He watched as Xie Ting screamed and rolled down the sand dune into the crowd. He pulled on the reins of his horse. "Who are you people?" Professor Su and the others were already trembling in fear. No one dared to answer the question. Zhang Xiu went over to help Xie Ting up and asked, "Are you okay?" Xie Ting's face was pale and she subconsciously shook her head. Suddenly, her eyes widened and she was very surprised. "It's you?" Zhang Xiu asked. "Why are you here?" Xie Ting said, "I." At this time, they were surrounded by more than 10 riders. Although the two soldiers still had guns in their hands, they were ignored by the bandits. In their eyes, They were not a threat at all. The boorish man said, "If you don't want me to kill this group of people, you better be obedient and put down your guns." As he spoke, he had already flipped over from the horse's back and strode forward. His feet stepped on the sand very forcefully, appearing very domineering. His eyes swept across the group of people who suddenly broke in. They were all old and young and looked very haggard. They did not look like people who were often in the desert. "I'm asking you, who are you?" Professor Su gathered his courage. He was the person in charge here. He struggled to stand up and said, "I'm a professor from Imperial College. These are my students. We're here to do archaeology." Professor Su's words were the same as his judgment. The person asked, "Archaeology? What project?" Professor Su said, "The ancient desert city." When these words were said, the bandits and Li Ting's faces changed. The bandit leader said, "You're saying that you're here to do archaeology?" "Yes." The bandit said, "Do you know where the ancient desert city is?" Professor Su raised the information in his hand and said, "We're looking for it." "Ha ha ha." The bandit laughed and turned to look at Li Ting. "It seems that there are a lot of people who want to go to the ancient desert city, but only you know where it is?" Hearing this, everyone looked at Li Ting. The young girl pursed her lips and didn't say anything. "You know?" Professor Su was so shocked that he forgot his fear as he stared at Li Ting. This kind of senior academic would often forget about other things when it came to pursuing academics. Zhang Xiu was no stranger to this. He had found some clues in Xie Sanqian's house. Xie Sanqian's ancestors were said to be generals of the Ming dynasty, but his appearance betrayed him. Xie Sanqian's eye rings were a little different from traditional Han Chinese, and so was Xie Ting. They were a little like mixed blood. Although the mixed blood was very thin, Zhang Xiu was very sensitive to bloodlines, so he could feel it. Xie Sanqian also had the longevity stone talisman in his hands. The Xie family had a deep relationship with the ancient desert city. "Does it really exist?" Professor Su asked. The bandit said, "Of course it exists. If it doesn't exist, then why would our Miss Xie bring her servants into the desert? Isn't she afraid that her dark skin won't be beautiful?" Xie Ting remained silent, not talking. The bandit gestured for his subordinates to grab someone. A nearby student was caught. Even now, Zhang Xiu didn't know his name. He seemed to be in his 3rd year. A gun was pressed against his head. He was so scared that his legs trembled. "Don't kill me, the bandit said. "Miss Xie, how do we get to the ancient desert city from here?" Xie Ting's beautiful eyes flashed. She couldn't bear to see him like this, but she still kept her mouth shut. Bang! His head exploded and he fell into a pool of blood. "Ah!" The crowd cried out in alarm. When the bandits went to catch them again, the 2 soldiers wanted to move, but they were stopped by several guns. The members of the expedition team were scared and shrank back. The nearest student was caught, and he immediately wailed, Don't kill me, I'm just here to have fun. I don't want to do archaeology, I don't want to do it anymore." Cold War shouted, "Meng Fei, that's enough. If you want to kill, then kill me. You know me? Not bad. You're a border guard." Meng Fei glanced at him and then looked back at Xie Ting. "How do we get to the ancient desert city from here?" Xie Ting still didn't respond. Professor Su shouted, "Miss Xie, you said it. Antiques are dead, but people are alive." Bang! Another shot. The second person was killed. Ah! This time, the crowd was even more restless. If this continued, they would all be killed. Xie Ting said softly, "Mr. Jiang, can't you deal with these bandits?" That day at Bodhi Biogenetics, Zhang Xiu could kill people with a raise of his hand. Xie Sanqian told her that Zhang Xiu was a demigod. Zhang Xiu said, "They have guns. You don't want me to die, right?" Cold War and Little Zhang looked at the 2 dead people and were heartbroken. As soldiers, seeing the people they protected die in front of them was worse than being killed. A gun was pressed against the 3rd person's head. "How do we get to the ancient desert city from here?" Bang! After the third person was killed, the crowd looked at the group of bandits in horror. Their eyes were filled with grief, and a few girls hugged each other in fear. Moth****. Meng Fei was angry. He killed 3 people in a row. Xie Ting didn't say anything. She raised her gun and fired. Suddenly, the crowd was screaming. No. If Cold War and the others hadn't been shot, they would have killed them. Ah! The crowd screamed. 6 or 7 people fell to the ground dead. 1 was shot in the thigh and 1 in the arm. You don't want to talk? I'll kill them all and then I'll kill you. The crowd was terrified. Miss Xie, please talk. Please talk. They knew begging the bandits was useless, so they all begged Xie Ting. Xie Ting's face was gloomy. She couldn't say anything about that place even if she died. But with so many lives at stake, she hesitated. I'll count to 3. 3, 2, 1. Beep. 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 The robber pulled the trigger, and the bullet shells popped out one by one. Xie Ting couldn't bear to look at the people who had fallen. She felt a deep sense of guilt. Finally, she couldn't help but shout, "Okay, I'll talk." The gunshots stopped. A few more people died. About 60 miles south from here is the Dragon Gathering sand vein. When we get there, I'll have to relocate. The bandit pointed his gun at the sky and smiled. You should have said so earlier. I wasted so many bullets. Don't waste time. Let's go immediately. The surviving members of the expedition didn't dare to continue. They couldn't escape. Of course, they had to find a way to leave the desert. Hurry up, Professor Su said. We're not going, the bandit said. You have to go. If Miss Xie plays any tricks on us, who will we find to kill? His words made the faces of the people who were still alive turn green. As it turned out, this was what they were doing now. Spurred on by this group of bandits, their movements became much faster. Whoever dared to be slow would be treated to lotus seed soup. Half a day after they left, another group of people arrived. Tribe leader, there seems to be a situation in front. The leader got off the camel and ran over to take a look. The ground was littered with corpses. He touched the blood that hadn't flowed out and said loudly, "They all died by force. From their clothes, they should be students from Imperial College. The blood hasn't dried yet. It should have happened not long ago." Shut. The tribe leader said, "Big brother Mu Sen, what do you think?" Mu Sen said, "This is strange. Did they meet bandits? Zhang Luoxia can't even deal with a group of bandits. The dead are all students from Imperial College. Don't worry about it. They shouldn't be too far ahead. Let's speed up and catch up." The tribe leader nodded. There were still footprints on the ground. If there was a sandstorm later, the tracks would be obliterated. It would be even more difficult to track down Zhang Luoxia's whereabouts. The group immediately followed the footprints on the ground. Chapter 159. With Xie Ting leading the way, their journey was much smoother. As the sun gradually set, the wind became stronger and stronger, sweeping up sand into the air. In this kind of weather, if they were not careful, they would encounter a tornado. The sand dunes on both sides were exceptionally high. As they walked on the path, it felt like they were entering a canyon. This is the place where the dragon dunes are gathered. Professor Su and the others, who had already lost all interest in exploring and only wanted to escape as soon as possible, could not help but take out the information for comparison. The drawing on the information was 90% similar to the surrounding sand dunes. It's here. The professor and the experts nodded with certainty. Meng Fei saw this and smiled. Xie Ting was tactful and did not play any tricks with him. She asked, "Next, we should go that way." Xie Ting pointed to one of the paths and said, "If we go further down this path, we will reach Thousand Ghost Cliff. However, looking at the weather, it seems like a sandstorm is coming." People who had been in the desert for a long time were best at observing the weather. If they encountered a sandstorm, they would have a slim chance of survival. Meng Fei said, "A sandstorm is coming." Sang Bao, "Catch someone to practice darts." Xie Ting was stunned and felt indignant. It was not up to her to decide whether a sandstorm would come or not. Why should she kill people? However, if she insisted on going through Thousand Ghost Cliff, not only would these weak students die, her chances of survival would also be very low. It was as if her life was in the hands of God. It was all up to luck. "Don't catch the students, catch me," Warrior Xiao Zhong said. Meng Fei said, "Okay, catch him." Xie Ting said coldly, "If you want to go, then go. When the time comes, you won't be able to get anything out of it." Xie Ting knew that according to the character of this group of bandits, if they really reached the ancient desert city, few of them would be able to survive. It was better to fight with them. Zhang Xiu had also read about Ghost Cliff before. It was also a strange place in the desert. There were many weathered rocks on both sides, and they were all black in color. When the wind blew, the sound that came out of the bumpy rocks sounded like the howling of ghosts. In addition to the dark clouds in the sky ahead, a storm could be faintly seen. It was very scary. The wind on the ground was already very strong, making it difficult for them to move forward. However, Meng Fei and his gang were like demons, forcing them to pass through Thousand Ghost Cliff. Ah! With a scream, a suitcase was swept up into the sky. One of Meng Fei's group said, "Big brother, we can't go any further. If we go any further, we'll all be blown away. It's better if we hide in the sand." Meng Fei cursed fiercely. Enter the cliff. The walls were about 20 to 30 meters high, and the paths inside were complicated. If they walked too deep, they might not be able to get out, so they stayed at the entrance. After entering, Meng Fei even let Sang Bao play darts. This person looked fierce, but he was actually very good at intimidating people. If it was too easy, not only would he let his guard down, these people would also have thoughts of escaping or resisting. "Let me do it." Little Zhang walked out angrily. Towards this group of bandits, he gnashed his teeth in hatred. Xiao Zhang stood with his back against the wall. Sang Leopard, who was opposite him, revealed a smile. However, no matter how you looked at it, it was an evil smile. He held a dagger in his hand. The blade was very sharp and could easily pierce into a person's body. "You better not move. If not, my dart will miss its target and hit your head." The students were already so scared that they almost stopped breathing. They had seen this kind of performance in the circus. There were also street performers, but those were all sideshows. However, this was real. They could lose their lives at any moment. Chou In-ru and the other girls were so scared that they didn't even dare to look. "Coming." Little Zhang's face was flushed red. He was very brave, but that didn't mean that he wasn't afraid of death. So, with a flash of white light, Little Zhang suddenly closed his eyes. The crowd gasped in shock, but they heard Morning Bao say, "You have some guts." That flying dagger had sliced open his cheek and pierced deep into the rock. Little Zhang's life was saved. Phew, everyone let out a sigh of relief. However, Sang Leopard's next sentence made everyone's hearts collapse. "Next." What? The exploration team members were all incomparably angry. This was playing them to death. However, in front of 10 cold machine guns, they didn't dare to resist. Otherwise, they would be shot. Li Qingji suddenly said, "This kind of throwing knife is unbearable to look at." The originally proud Sang Leopard's face turned cold when he heard this. "What did you say?" Li Qingji said, "I said that your throwing knife isn't good. Stop showing off here. If you don't believe me, we can have a competition." Interesting, Meng Fei said. "I have also heard of Master Li's name. Then let's all play. If you win, then this game is over. If you lose, then I'll kill one person." Li Qingji said, "All right, it's a deal." "Li Lei, you compete with him," his son responded and walked out. His face was pale. He should be very nervous, but he didn't hesitate. "How can we compete?" Li Qingji said, "There is a rock there." Of course, Whoever shoots the deepest wins. The rocks in the desert were somewhat soft, but some were incomparably hard. That rock was incomparably hard. For Sang Leopard to be able to pierce it with his throwing knife was already very good. All right. Xie Ting softly said to Zhang Xiu, "Is there any way? Let's exterminate this group of bandits. Even if I bring them to the ancient desert city, they still won't let us go." Zhang Xiu said, "How do we exterminate them? They have guns." In Xie Ting's heart, Zhang Xiu wasn't this kind of person. He was very strong and could kill people with a raise of his hand. Along the way, he had killed 7 or 8 people with a flick of his finger. How could he be afraid of a bandit's gun? They were in the crowd, so it was inevitable that their words would be heard. Shen Duan was on the side and softly said, "Don't count on him. He is just a piece of trash. It's all his fault. He's so slow. Otherwise, we wouldn't have met the bandits." Shen Duan vented his fear and anger on Zhang Xiu. He didn't know that Zhang Xiu was slow because he purposely gave him an inferior camel. "That's right, he's a jinx. You're still counting on him." The surrounding students all agreed. They all looked like they wanted to beat up Zhang Xiu. When Xie Ting heard this, she roughly knew that these people didn't know what kind of person Zhang Xiu was. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to complain. She didn't respond to them and looked at the field. She asked, "Who will win?" Zhang Xiu said, "Li Lei." The professor and the students had different opinions. It was good to be wronged, but the reality was often cruel. "Why?" Zhang Xiu smiled faintly. His gaze fell on Li Lei. Li Lei knows how to use his internal energy. The invisible force is superior to the visible force. This is the truth. Xie Ting didn't necessarily understand what he was saying. The visible force was the so-called direct physical force. The invisible force, such as qi, mental power, curse power, or even transcendence energy. These forces couldn't be seen or touched, but they truly existed. Some of these forces were so strong that it was hard to imagine. Those with high transcendence energy could overturn rivers and seas. They could raise the surface of the sea 100 feet high and not fall back down. This was not something that could be done by the so-called visible force. Peng! Li Lei's dagger shot out with a white light. It was so fast that it couldn't be seen. The dagger had already sunk deep into the rock, all the way to the hilt. Hua! The field couldn't help but go into an uproar. The group of bandits all revealed looks of shock. Sang Bao's dagger had sunk 3 inches into the rock, but Li Lei's entire blade had sunk into the rock. "Good, very good." Meng Fei said, "I only knew that the Spirit Tomb sect was good at robbing tombs, but I didn't know that their martial arts cultivation was also so high. You can protect one person's life and go to the safe zone." Li Lei didn't hesitate. "My father." Meng Fei said, "Good. Master Li, please go to the safe zone." Li Qingji nodded and walked towards the safe zone. Peng! Suddenly a gunshot rang out. Li Lei's head was shot through and he fell into a pool of blood. "Li Lei!" Li Qingji loudly shouted. You guys didn't keep your word." Meng Fei said, "We kept our word and let one of you go. Master Li, your son is very filial. He used his life to exchange for yours. I'm really happy for you." "You." The sound of wind and sand whistling came from outside. A sandstorm was coming. Even if they were inside the rock, they could feel the strong wind blowing. The sky was filled with flying sand. The entire ground seemed like it was going to be swept up by the wind. At this time, the 2 warriors finally exploded. They charged at the bandits and snatched their guns. When the wind filled the world, they could only see the flashes of the guns. They couldn't even hear the sound of the bullets being fired. They resisted. They finally resisted. Chapter 160. Gunfire shot in all directions, bursting out with amazing lethality. Outside the sandstone, the storm was howling, and the eardrums were hurting. After a full 10 to 20 minutes, the storm outside finally faded away. The sky was filled with yellow sand falling like rain, recreating the desert atmosphere. The sandstone wall slowly lit up, and what appeared inside was a creepy and unbelievable scene. There were several ghastly skeletons standing in the middle of the field, and they were still in a fighting posture. They even held machine guns in their hands, and there were clothes falling vertically at their feet. Not far away, Li Lei's body had also become a skeleton. In an instant, the entire Gue Qianyan sandstone wall became eerie and strange. How could this be? The voice was still trembling. Such a strange scene simply made people's hair stand on end. This was much more terrifying than bandits killing people. Ah! A girl screamed. She turned her head and found that the classmate beside her had also become a pile of bones, and he was standing right next to her. Ghost! Regardless of whether it was the bandits or the members of the expedition team, they could not care less. Even the air in the sandstone cave was filled with gloom and terror, and they desperately fled out of the cave. This was definitely not something a human could do. Turning a person into a pile of bones, even a brilliant anatomist could not do it. It felt more like being eaten dry. But when they escaped, they found that the scenery outside had completely changed. It was completely different from when they had just entered, as if they were in another desert. What made them even more desperate was that the sun had set behind the mountain, and the sky was turning dark. What should we do? Meng Fei's face was also very ugly. 6 of his brothers had died, and including him, there were less than 10 people left. The expedition team had more than 10 people left, and half of them had died. The horses had long fled, and the camels were loyal. When they encountered sandstorms, they would lie on the ground and use their bodies to shield their masters. But this time, almost all of them had fled. A terrible haze shrouded everyone's heart. The curtain of night was approaching silently. What should we do? Should we escape or stay? The horses and camels had all fled, and they carried water on their backs. There was very little left with them, and it was not enough for them to walk out of the desert. Moreover, now that the sandstorm had stirred up, they did not know where they were. If he stayed, he would only be waiting for death. Moreover, Gue Qianya was so strange. F*CK, leaving is death, staying is also death. I've long heard that Gue Qianya is evil, and I really fell for it. Boss, let's just kill all of them. Then, we'll think of a way to return to the main camp. When Xie Ting heard that he wanted to kill them, she said, "Save it." Once night falls, no one can leave the 1,000-ghost cliff. It's said that it's a ghost wall. When the bandits heard this, their faces turned pale. "Little bitch, who are you trying to scare?" Xie Ting glanced at him coldly. Believe it or not, everything that had happened inside was enough to prove that this place was very strange. In addition, they had stayed in the desert for many years and had heard some rumors about Gue Qianya. Meng Fei said, "Then what does Miss Xie think?" His tone was much more polite than before. Xie Ting said, "Let's rest here for the night. We'll think of a way tomorrow." Sang Bao shouted and pointed the gun in his hand at Xie Ting. F*CK, B*TCH, are you trying to kill us? This place is so strange, Xie Ting said. If something happens, won't we be the last ones to die? If something really happened, of course no one would be able to escape. Meng Fei spat out 2 words. They. Sang Bao was in disbelief. Big brother. If I say stay, then stay. If they couldn't get out and wandered around, then they would be wasting their energy. Meng Fei had his own considerations. His subordinates didn't dare to say anything and could only rest on the spot. Meng Fei said, "If I'm not wrong, this place shouldn't be far from the ancient desert city. It would take 5 or 6 days to get out of the desert, but less than a day to get there. Miss Xie, can you bring us there tomorrow?" Xie Ting obviously didn't want to bring this group of bandits, but the only way now was to go to the ancient desert city. Otherwise, they would all die in the desert. She went to the rock beside Zhang Xiu and sat down. She didn't answer him. It could be considered a silent agreement. What do we do? The food and water are all on the camels. It's all gone. Is there any water? Most of the people in the exploration team shook their heads. At this point, water was life. It was more valuable than gold. If they had some on them, they would just treat it as if they had no water. Gulp, gulp. The sound of drinking water could be heard. Everyone looked over and saw that it was Zhang Xiu sitting on the rock with a confident look on his face. He raised his head and admired the beautiful scenery in the distance. Far away, the sandstorm still hadn't dissipated. Miss Xie, will you dislike me for drinking it? Zhang Xiu handed it over. Xie Ting was definitely thirsty. Her originally tender red lips were dry. This was life-saving water. No matter how reserved or misophobic she was, she couldn't care less. She sincerely said, "Thank you." Then she reached out and took it. She didn't dare to drink too much. She only drank a little to moisten her throat before handing it back to Zhang Xiu. Zhang Xiu smiled and said, "It's fine. Drink more." Xie Ting thanked him again before drinking in large mouthfuls. Then she remembered that she was too thirsty and was showing signs of dehydration. After drinking, she stuck out her tongue and licked her lips. She saw Zhang Xiu looking at her with a smile in his eyes. Her face couldn't help but heat up slightly. Only then did she hand the goatskin flask back to Zhang Xiu. Not far away, the people in the exploration team were all green with envy. Shen Duan walked over to Zhang Xiu and said, "Zhang Xiu, can you let me have a sip too?" Zhang Xiu smiled faintly. "Do you think I will give it to you?" Shen Duan's expression was ugly. "No, you won't." Zhang Xiu said, "Then why are you still asking?" Shen Duan was very angry. "I put down my face to beg you, and you have this kind of attitude. Zhang Xiu, don't go too far. After all, we are a team." Zhang Xiu said, "Aren't you ashamed to say this?" Shen Duan had fantasized that Zhang Xiu would sooner or later run out of water. At that time, he would beg him like a dog, and then he would ruthlessly humiliate him. But he didn't expect that the reality was the opposite. The people who ran out of water were the ones who brought enough water. And that person who was dressed simply still had water. It was a great irony. "We were wrong in the past. We apologize to you. Zhang Xiu, don't lower yourself to our level." Zhang Xiu said, "If you said this to me before you ran out of water, I would believe you and forgive you. Unfortunately, you are saying this now because you want my water. In order to please Jin Shi, you joined with your classmates to isolate me. In order to survive, you bent your knees to me. You make me feel disgusted. Get lost, don't let me see you." Shen Duan's face was ashen. "You?" Everyone in the exploration team looked at him. They didn't think so before, but now that they heard Zhang Xiu say it, Shen Duan's character was actually so low. Zhou Yinru's face revealed a look of shame. She didn't think that she had done anything wrong, especially since Zhang Xiu had always done things his way. But now she understood that Zhang Xiu was a very sincere person. At the very least, he wasn't a hypocrite. Moreover, he really wanted to come to the ancient desert city. From the beginning, he was full of sincerity. She had first agreed, but after he solved the problem, she went back on her words. At this moment, she felt regret for what she had done. She could have refused from the beginning, but she couldn't go back on her words after agreeing. She even wanted to obstruct Zhang Xiu's trip. She had always thought that going out to explore was a privilege. Now that she was in such a predicament, she realized that she was wrong. It seemed that she owed him an apology. However, according to Zhang Xiu's personality, he wouldn't accept it. Moreover, if she apologized now, Zhang Xiu would definitely think that she was greedy for his water. "Brat, you have a lot of water. Why are you giving it to others?" Meng Fei's group had already noticed Zhang Xiu. He seemed to know Xie Ting. Moreover, from the sound of his voice, it seemed that he had a lot of water in his bottle. Zhang Xiu said, "There's not much left." Sang Bao said, "Give it to me." He pointed his gun at Zhang Xiu. His meaning was clear. "If you don't give it to me, I'll shoot. Zhang Xiu smiled and opened the bottle. His meaning was clear. If you shoot, all the water will be poured out. Xie Ting didn't know if Zhang Xiu was really afraid of guns. He was so powerful that day, but it was possible that he was afraid of being robbed. Thus, she said, Meng Fei, he's Mr. Jiang from Jiangnan. You better not have any ideas about him. Meng Fei's expression changed. Mr. Jiang? Which Mr. Jiang? Jiang Luoxia. Li Qingji's expression changed greatly. What, he's Jiang Luoxia? Chapter 161. Others might not know about Jiang Luoxia from Jiangnan, but how could Li Qingji not know about him? He controlled lightning, killed Lin Zhenbei, suppressed the Wang family, and stepped on half of Jiangnan. His name was like thunder to the ears. Even though they were short on water and food, and their lives were uncertain, Li Qingji still stood up and walked over to Zhang Xiu. I didn't know that Mr. Jiang was here, so I apologize for my lack of respect. Whoa, all the students present were a little confused. What was going on? Li Qingji, who was famous in Pinghai, actually bowed to Zhang Xiu. Moreover, his tone and attitude were like a junior greeting an elder. Who is Zhang Xiu? Everyone looked at each other. They didn't know about Mr. Jiang from Jiangnan, but they were terrified to see someone as important as Li Qingji being so respectful to him. Zhou Yinru's eyes widened. She thought to herself, is he that powerful? Zhang Xiu said, forget it. These days, Li Qingji and his son had zero interaction with Zhang Xiu. Meng Fei also looked at Zhang Xiu in shock. He had heard of Jiang Luoxia's name in the desert, but not much. He only heard that this person was important in Jiangnan's underground. He didn't know much about him, but he was so young. You're hiding a real dragon. Zhang Xiu smiled faintly. Do you still want my water? Sang Bao's expression was ugly. He didn't know who Mr. Jiang was, but he didn't dare to act rashly when he saw that Li Qingji and his brother were so afraid of him. However, it wasn't his style to admit defeat. He secretly looked at Meng Fei. Meng Fei laughed and said, now that we're in the same boat, we should work together. How can we ask for Mr. Jiang's name? His words were tactful, but everyone knew that he didn't dare to provoke Zhang Xiu. This made Professor Su, Qian Deshen, and the students of Capital University extremely shocked. Zhang Xiu turned out to be such a person with such a background. Since the beginning of the school, they had been rejecting him. Thinking of this, they were a little annoyed in their hearts. They had joined forces to reject a freshman, but in the end, they had kicked a steel plate. However, it was useless to think about this now. Life and death were hard to predict. The three groups of people formed three small groups. Meng Fei's group, the exploration team's group, and Zhang Xiu and Xie Ting's group. They were going to survive this difficult night. Xie Ting asked, does Mr. Jiang have any plans after this? Zhang Xiu gave her some compressed biscuits and chocolates. Xie Ting took them, thanked him, and started eating. One could imagine the happiness of receiving food when one was extremely hungry. Zhang Xiu said, I don't have any plans. I'm not familiar with the desert, so I can only rely on you guys. Miss Xie, do you go to the desert often? Xie Ting's hand paused in the middle of eating. She nodded and continued eating. For the ancient desert city. Xie Ting nodded again. Gifts blind the eyes, eating the mouth softens the heart, let alone now in such a situation. Zhang Xiu said, does your family have anything to do with the ancient desert city? Could it be that you are the descendants of the people in the ancient desert city? Actually, I can see that you're not a purebred Han. Xie Ting raised her head and looked at Zhang Xiu, her eyes full of shock. From her expression, Zhang Xiu could be sure that his deduction was correct. However, he didn't continue to ask. There was no need to expose her background. Right now, the only way was to go to the ancient desert city. Once they arrived, everything would naturally be revealed. Rest early and recover your energy. We still have to hurry tomorrow. Jiang Xiu also gave his sleeping mat to Xie Ting. Although it was called a sleeping mat, it was actually a blanket used to cushion the sand on the ground. As for himself, he leaned against a rock to rest. Meng Fei's group was also quietly muttering. There were only 8 of them left, and they all had machine guns. Their opponents were Jiang Xiu, Xie Ting, Li Chengji, Li Bang, and especially the father and son of the Li family. They killed their son and brother, so of course they had to be careful. Sang Bao said, "Big brother, we have guns in our hands. Why should we be afraid of that bull*t Mr. Jiang? What's so great about him?" Meng Fei frowned. This person can make a name for himself in Jiangnan. There are also rumors that he might be a demigod. It's not wise to go against him in public. Sang Bao said, "Bull*t demigod. If he wasn't afraid of our machine guns, he wouldn't have let us kill so many of his people." Meng Fei nodded. "That makes sense. In my opinion, in the second half of the night, we'll use our guns to kill them all and take their water and food. We'll leave Xie Ting and a few hostages behind. Tomorrow, we'll set off to find the ancient desert city." Meng Fei said, "If the enemy doesn't move, we won't move. Now that Xie Ting is willing to bring us to the ancient desert city, we've achieved our goal. Let's not complicate things. It won't be too late to make a move when we get there." "Listen to boss." Meng Fei nodded, indicating that his brothers should rest early. Then, he looked towards the sand at Thousand Ghost Cliff. At this moment, it was pitch black, like a monster crawling in the desert. Meng Fei thought of the experience in the cave. Those eerie white bones made his hair stand on end. He didn't dare to look again. Li Chengji and Li Bang couldn't help but look towards Meng Fei's group. The hatred of killing their son and brother was irreconcilable. They actually had a way to take revenge. There were machine guns left behind by Meng Fei's group in the cave. But the cave was so scary that Li Chengji and Li Bang didn't dare to enter. As mages, they had no idea what had happened in the cave. It was far beyond their abilities, so they didn't dare to enter. Not to mention them, even Jiang Xiu didn't have any abnormalities. His vision in the dark was much better than theirs. He didn't even see how people became a pile of white bones. So that night, Jiang Xiu was looking forward to something special happening. But unfortunately, other than the students shivering in the cold and tossing and turning, nothing special happened. Chou Yinru and Yan Yi hugged each other and slept through the night. When the temperature was lowest in the middle of the night, Chou Yinru's body began to heat up. She had a high fever. While she was in a daze, she felt that someone had fed her medicine and water. There was even a mouthful of sweet chocolate. She was very confused from the fever, but she vaguely knew who it was. Right now, other than Jiang Xiu, they all had no food or water. Unknowingly, tears flowed from her eyes. The next day, when the sun rose, the cold world gained some warmth. The people who were already frozen to death all got up. It wasn't just the students who couldn't stand it. Meng Fei, the father and son of the Li family, couldn't stand it either. They pulled themselves together and continued on their way. At 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, the heat became unbearable again. The ground was smoking from the heat, and the air around them was distorted. It was difficult to walk forward. "Miss Xie, how far are we?" Xie Ting pressed her hands on her knees and pointed ahead. "After passing the sand dune in front, we'll arrive." When everyone heard this, they looked up and saw a layer of golden light in the distant horizon. It merged with the strong light of the sun, and they could vaguely make out the head of a giant statue. The head was as big as a small mountain, and half of it was hidden in the desert, showing off its ancient and mysterious nature. At this moment, everyone's heart skipped a beat. Had they really arrived? Is that one of the 3 monster trainers, the Sky Monster Trainer? Professor Su was supported by someone. According to the records, there were 3 monster trainers in the ancient desert city. From their appearance, they looked like Sky Monster Trainers. "Professor, is the mysterious person a Sky Monster Trainer?" "It's a god." Meng Fei was also stunned. From the light emitted by the statue, it was exactly the same as the information he had received. This statue was made of pure gold, which was equivalent to a mountain of gold. "We're here, we're really here." Zhang Xiu's gaze froze. The god's corpse was not a statue, but a corpse. It was not supposed to be gold. He had never heard of a gold Protoss being different from this person. Zhang Xiu concluded that this person's body had collapsed after being turned into gold. "Quick, let's go." Xieting had said that there was water in the ancient desert city. Now, regardless of whether it was a mountain of gold or silver, it was worth less than a mouthful of water. Beep beep beep. Suddenly, there was a gunshot. Bullets swept across the desert, creating craters. Everyone stopped in their tracks in fright. Meng Fei raised his gun and said, "Miss Xie, you still haven't told me where the entrance to the ancient desert city is." Xieting said, "I don't know either. Playing tricks with me?" Meng Fei raised his gun and was about to kill. Xieting shouted in fear, "Don't kill here, you'll be cursed." But the bullet had already been fired. Chapter 162. Everything was too late. The bullet had already been fired. His target was the Li father and son. Moreover, it was the son Li Bang who had fallen behind. The Li family had enmity with him, so of course he had to kill them first. The bullet pierced through the head and fresh blood sprayed out. The scarlet blood fell onto the yellow sand. Xieting's eyes widened in terror as if something terrifying had happened. Of course, it wasn't because she had killed someone. There had been more than 1 or 2 people killed by this wave of bandits in the desert. But her terrified appearance made it seem like she was about to collapse. "Curse!" Meng Fei sneered and said, "Do you think I will believe such a childish lie? You just want to stop me from killing them. Not only them, if you don't speak, I will kill you as well." Xieting shook her head. Her eyes were filled with terror as she said, "I didn't lie to you. Now, you don't even need to kill us. All of us will die here. You've harmed everyone, including yourself." Meng Fei didn't believe it at first, but seeing Xieting's expression, he couldn't help but be shaken. Xieting's terror was not on the surface, but from the depths of her soul. "Don't try to scare me with words." Xieting said, "I didn't lie to you. You should have heard of what happened here 400 years ago. After that night, this place was cursed." Meng Fei's face gradually turned pale. He had a certain understanding of the ancient desert city. Of course, he had a plan to ambush the Xie family for so long before succeeding. Moreover, he had heard people say that this place was extremely strange. "What will happen?" Xieting said, "The cursed person's physical body will burn to ashes." Meng Fei's face twitched. "Is there a way to break the curse?" Xieting said, "There is, but I don't know what it means. The wrath of the Yin Yang fire god will cause one to crawl to the other side of hell. In another world, one will fall forever." Meng Fei shook his head. He did not believe it. However, in the next second, everyone was dumbfounded. They were extremely frightened. Li Qingji's entire body was trembling. Li Bang, who had been killed, suddenly burst into flames. It was like a person was burning. This flame was completely different from the flames that everyone had seen. In just a few breaths, his entire body was burned until only a humanoid shadow was left. Ah! Meng Fei felt as if he was in an ice cellar. How could this be? He felt his eyes turn red, and his eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. "Speak. You must know a way to break the curse. You must. Otherwise, I'll kill you." Xieting said sadly, "It's useless to kill me. I don't know either. Besides, I'm about to die. No one can survive. Look at your left arm." Meng Fei took a look. There was a flame-like pattern on his arm that was spreading up his arm. He was stunned. Xieting's voice rang in his ears. "When your spell reaches your heart, you'll burn like the people you've killed." The others also raised their arms, and on each of their wrists, there was an image of a flame that spread to their arms. How could this be? I don't want to die. Meng Fei raised the machine gun and pointed it at Xie Ting. You must have a way. You must. Speak. If you don't, I'll kill you. Xie Ting shook her head sadly. She didn't want to die either. She was only 16 or 17 years old. Her life had just begun, and she was still so beautiful. I don't believe it, I don't believe it. But at this time a voice said, It's useless to kill him. Everyone turned to see Zhang Xiu. He said, The wrath of the Yin Yang fire god requires you to crawl to the other side of hell. In another world, you'll fall forever. It requires you to go to another world. As long as you stay in this world, you'll be burned. Meng Fei said, Go to another world? How? This sounded like a fairy tale. Zhang Xiu said, Simple. If you die, you can go to another world. Wasn't that obvious? However, what Zhang Xiu said was something they could understand. Meng Fei thought that Zhang Xiu was mocking him, and he was furious. What are you so proud of? Aren't you the same as me? If we die, you'll die too. Zhang Xiu looked at his left hand. There was a similar flame on his left wrist. I still have to die? Professor Su, Qiu Yinru, and the others looked at the spell diagram on their arms. Their eyes were filled with despair. Suddenly, there was a commotion behind them. Everyone turned around and saw a group of people rushing towards them. Xie Ting immediately shouted, Don't come over. Qiu Yinru and the others also shouted. However, that group of people was surprisingly energetic. They rode on the Camel Mountain at a fast speed. Perhaps they saw them. Not only did they not stop, they even sped up. Not long after, they arrived in front of them. It was none other than the Jin family. Leading them was the eldest brother of the Jin family. Mu Senator beside him was the elder of the Jin family, the smoking old man. Their faces were a little dusty, but they didn't look embarrassed at all. Don't come over. Xie Ting shook her head. It was too late. They had already stepped into the blood-stained land and were cursed. The elder of the Jin family saw Professor Su, Chen Deshen, Qiu Yinru, and the others. They looked like professors and students. He was 70 to 80% sure that these people were the expedition team from Imperial Capital University. Excuse me, are you Professor Su's classmates from Imperial Capital University? Professor Su nodded in surprise. We are. The elder of the Jin family said, We are the Pinghai Jin family. We are Jin Shi's elders. If it wasn't for the curse, they would definitely cheer. They were saved, they were saved. But now, they felt even more miserable and ironic. Professor Su said, I don't see young Master Jin. We didn't abandon young Master Jin and enter the desert alone. We just couldn't contact him. The elder of the Jin family said, I know. This has nothing to do with Professor Su. Jin Shi's legs were broken and he had surgery on the spot. That's why he couldn't come. The culprit is among you. You are Mr. Zhang? He looked at Zhang Xiu. Everyone here was exhausted. Only Zhang Xiu stood there calmly. Only a demigod could maintain such a demeanor after so long in the desert. Zhang Xiu said, That's right. I broke Jin Shi's legs. The students present couldn't help but exclaim. No wonder young Master Jin suddenly disappeared. Since you know who I am, how dare you chase me into the desert? The elder of the Jin family's face darkened. Humph, anyone who offends the Pinghai Jin family has to pay the price. You, Zhang Luoxia, can show off in Zhongnan. But if you dare to touch the Jin family, you won't be able to leave the desert today. Zhang Xiu said, Do you have the ability to do that? The elder of the Jin family said, Even if you are a demigod, so what? Don't we have demigods in the Jin family? Zhang Xiu said, It's you? Mu Sen had been staring at Zhang Xiu ever since he arrived. Demigods had a special connection with demigods. It was as if he had seen his own kind. He said, It's really surprising that you're still so young. Unfortunately, your cultivation path has come to an end. His hair started to move even though there was no wind, and the air around him changed. Xie Ting said, "Does the Jin family still want to fight Mr. Jiang? I advise you to save it. Now, we're all going to die. Everyone, look at your left arms. You've all been cursed. Anyone who steps foot in here will die." Hearing this, the Jin family looked at their arms. Even Mu Sen's expression changed. "How can this be? This is the ancient desert city. Because of the massacre 400 years ago, this place has been cursed. If anyone kills here, everyone here will be cursed. What happens if you're cursed? When the flame reaches your heart, you'll be burned to death." The elder of the Jin family said, "Bullshit. So what if I killed someone?" "Everyone, look." They saw a golden light shoot up into the sky. The entire ground shook as if there was an earthquake. Then, they saw the desert rise up like waves. It was as if something was emerging from the ground. They could vaguely see a dark shadow. In the next moment, everyone was dumbfounded. A golden giant hundreds of meters tall stood in the distance. Chapter 163. The 100-meter-tall golden giant standing in the middle of the desert really made people daydream. Professor Su and Chen Deshen found it hard to imagine how he had appeared here. It was simply unimaginable to build such a huge statue. Modern people could barely do it after spending a lot of money and material resources, but how did people from hundreds of years ago do it? They couldn't help but imagine the golden giant being tied up by countless chains, with countless carts and thousands of laborers pulling it. Wonder, it's really a wonder. When Professor Su saw this scene, his whole body was filled with excitement. He felt that being able to see such a spectacle before his death could be considered as a consolation before his death. It's really shocking. Chen Deshen was also shocked. It was a pity that he had lost all his cameras along the way. Otherwise, if he had taken a photo, it would definitely cause a sensation and attract countless archaeologists. This place would also become a hot spot for archaeologists to see the mystery of the golden giant. It's gold, right? The thickness of the statue was definitely made of pure gold. They would be rich if they dug out a few pieces. In the desert, it was said that there were many similar treasures, which was also the reason why there were so many desert adventurers. However, most of the time, they found them but couldn't take them away. When they found them, they were already exhausted. In addition, these precious things were too heavy, so they could only look at them and sigh. Yellow sand poured down from the golden statue. Under the sunlight and the golden light, it seemed to turn into golden sand. The light was very dazzling. No. The next moment, everyone was dumbfounded once again. They were shocked to the extreme. The golden giant statue, which was hundreds of meters tall, slowly lowered its head. Wow, this was really something. Everyone present was almost scared out of their wits. It's alive? At this moment, everyone's first reaction was to run, but their legs seemed to be locked to the ground. They couldn't move at all. They were so shocked that they couldn't move. They could only instinctively look up at the golden giant. He's coming. The golden giant took a step forward and walked like a normal person. Boom! The entire sand wave rolled over with one step. When it was raised, it was as high as a 10-story building. When it landed, it covered the sky and covered the earth. What should we do? The distance of a few hundred meters was a matter of 2 steps for the golden giant. In an instant, it was in front of everyone. Run. If he were to be stepped on, he would be turned into a pile of mud. Only now did they think of escaping, but it was already too late. The golden giant was already closing in. He was like a god from the legends, his entire body glowing with golden light. His face was like a statue, and his eyes were like those of a bodhisattva. He looked like an inanimate object, but he was actually alive. Ah! The crowd screamed. In the face of life and death, they used the last of their strength to escape. Boom! With a stomp, those who were too slow were directly trampled under the foot. As for those who had escaped the range of the stomp, they were sent flying into the air by the yellow sand. It felt as if they had been hit by a wave on the surface of the sea. They were pushed to the top of the wave and then fell back down heavily. "Shoot him, shoot him!" someone shouted, and Meng Fei and the others remembered that they still had machine guns. Beep beep beep. They immediately raised their machine guns and fired at the golden giant. The bullets had terrifying, penetrative power and speed. In everyone's mind, there were two possibilities. One was that the bullets had pierced through the golden giant, and the other was that they had not. After all, the golden giant looked like it was made of gold, and it was very difficult to break through its defense. However, the result was beyond everyone's expectations. When the bullets were about to hit the golden giant, they fell through the air. Under the golden giant's skin, the space seemed to be distorted, and there was a layer of light film. The bullets could not even reach the golden giant. Ah! Seeing this scene, everyone felt a sense of helplessness from the bottom of their hearts. What kind of existence was this? It could actually emit such incredible power. Beep beep beep. Meng Fei and the others were furious. They did not believe it. The bullets fell through the air, but no matter how they roared, howled, or pulled the trigger, the bullets could not get close to the golden giant. Shock, despair. Suddenly, the crowd cried out in alarm. Meng Fei and the others screamed as they saw the golden giant kick them. The area it covered was too large, and there was no way to dodge it. They were sent flying like soccer balls. They fell dozens of meters away and landed heavily on the sand. No one knew if they were dead or alive. "Brother Mu Sen, what should we do?" "Do it." The one called Mu Sen stepped on the camel and soared into the air like a rock spreading its wings. He rose 4 to 5 meters high and hung in the air. His hands twisted, as if he was activating some kind of power. However, he saw the wild sand behind him sweeping up like a dragon and wind under the guidance of his power. As his palms slowly pushed out, the wind and sand behind him suddenly rushed forward, bringing with it a whistling sound that filled the sky. Roar! Professor Su and the others were shocked. Was this still a human? He was like a top warrior in a novel. He could actually control the sand to rush out. The power was so strong that it was like an angry dragon coming out of the sea. This is the heaven and earth reversal teleportation technique from the Taiping Tao scripture. Brother Mu Sen actually mastered it. The disciples of the Jin family were also shocked. This move is like an immortal technique. The sand rushed out dozens of meters. They were very excited. This was a demigod of the Jin family. No matter what the opponent was, a demigod was here. Why couldn't they fight? "You're defeated," Mu Sen roared. The power of his palms burst out completely. Roar! The wind howled even more violently. Boom! The golden giant threw a punch at the surging sand. The airwaves brought about by the violent fist force surged, and the solidified sand sprayed out like a fountain. Then, as if it had lost its power, it drifted away with the wind. What? Mu Sen was shocked, but he didn't have time to react. The fist came through the air and his whole body flew back like a kite with a broken string. He spat out a mouthful of blood in the air and fell to the ground with a bang. The sand on the ground that had been swept up by the wind also lost its power and fell back down. Brother Mu Sen. Several members of the Jin family rushed over, leaving after images. They pulled Mu Sen up and flew back. "He's too strong." Mu Sen spat out blood and said with difficulty, "This person may be a god." When he said this, he felt a kind of panic in his heart. God was an existence above mortals. How could they resist? It was also what he wanted to pursue in his life. Fight it out with him. The smoking old man was hot-tempered and stubborn. Seeing this situation, he was ruthless and wanted to fight. "No, no." Mu Sen grabbed the smoking old man in horror. "A god can't be resisted. We can only kowtow and submit." Just now, everyone saw the power of the golden giant. It was really hard to imagine what kind of scene it would be if he appeared in a modern city. Tall buildings were only as high as his calves. He could step on them by raising his foot. Cars were like paper under his feet. It would take less than a day to destroy a city. Escape, we can't escape. Fight, we can't beat him. What can we do? Mu Sen said nervously, Quick, kneel down. He endured the pain and was the first to kneel on the ground. He was very sincere. Everyone realized the meaning of Mu Sen's words. If it was really a god, of course, they would kowtow. Yes, yes, everyone kneel down. Everyone echoed. It felt like they had found a way to save themselves. One by one, they hurriedly knelt down, just like the believers of this god. This seemed to be their last hope. They seemed to have made the right bet. The huge golden statue didn't attack them anymore. It stopped there and looked down at them. This made them more certain that the person in front of them was a god. They had to be pious. Only by being pious could they save their lives. But they found that the golden giant turned his head to look at a person on the side. They also looked and saw another person standing there. This person was none other than Zhang Xiu. Mu Sen and the others were all shocked. Li Chengji and the others were even more frightened because they were not far from Zhang Xiu. Mr. Zhang, kneel down. Hurry up. Chapter 164. Zhang Xiu raised his head and stared coldly at the golden giant. His eyes were bright, and the corner of his mouth raised into a smile. It was as if he hadn't heard anything and had no intention of kneeling. Everyone was anxious and looked at Zhang Xiu with complicated expressions. Everyone present obviously hoped that Zhang Xiu would hurry and kneel. The one standing in front of him was a god. If he didn't kneel, he would definitely anger the god and be killed. It would be fine if he was killed, and no one would feel sorry for him. However, they were afraid that the god would see them as a group. Killing Zhang Xiu wouldn't be enough. The god would vent his anger on them and kill them all. Hurry, hurry and kneel, Mr. Zhang. It'll be too late if you don't kneel now. Shen Duan had been unhappy with Zhang Xiu for a long time. He hated Zhang Xiu's attitude. He was arrogant and didn't listen to anyone at all. But if you die, you deserve it. Don't drag me down with you. Does he want to fight the god? The elder of the Jin family said. He's asking for it. Even brother Mu San was defeated, let alone him. The gap between a demigod and a god is a gap that can't be crossed. He'll only get us killed. This group of people didn't care what Zhang Xiu thought. If he dragged them down, they wouldn't agree. A brainless brute doesn't know fear. How can he challenge a god? He'll only anger the god and end up disappearing. The elder of the Jin family said. I'm afraid it's too late to kneel now. The golden giant was already leaning towards Zhang Xiu, as if he was about to punish him. But unexpectedly he spoke. Human, why don't you kneel? The golden giant was hundreds of meters tall, and his voice was extremely loud. When it came, it felt like it came from the ancient sky. It was shocking. He spoke. Oh my God. This god wasn't emotionless, but he actually understood the language of mortals. It was too shocking. Zhang Xiu slowly raised his head and looked at him indifferently. You don't deserve it. What? The golden giant didn't say anything, but the people present were about to explode. He was a god, and you're just a mortal. Why can't you accept kneeling to a god? To be able to accept your worship and not kill you is already a great favor from the god. Who do you think you are? You don't know what you're talking about. At this moment, these people really wanted the golden giant to kill Zhang Xiu in a fit of rage. He thought too highly of himself. You have to pay the price for your arrogance, the old ancestor of the Jin family said fiercely. You really don't know who you are? He dared to be so arrogant in front of a god. Many people thought that he had gone mad from fear. How dare you? As expected, the giant golden god was enraged. You're just a mere mortal. Why can't I accept it? I think you must be tired of living. Zhang Xiu said, then I'll let you know why you can't accept it. With that, Zhang Xiu walked towards the giant golden god. Mr. Jiang, where are you going? Xie Ting was stunned for a moment before asking in surprise. To slay a god. Jiang Xiu answered calmly as he walked. He's crazy. Isn't he just letting others pick him up for free? The members of the Jin family, the bandits, and the members of the exploration team all looked at Jiang Xiu as if they were looking at an idiot. How could a human resist such a god? Even bullets would fall when they got close. How could you do anything to a god, let alone slay one? How could you be so arrogant? It was ridiculous. You're courting death. Boom! The giant golden god threw a punch at Jiang Xiu. His fist was so big that it was dozens of times taller than Jiang Xiu. In front of the giant fist, Jiang Xiu was like a dwarf. His strength was so fierce that it could even smash a mountain. The moment he punched out, even the air was compressed and distorted, breaking inch by inch. Its power was like a white wind blowing past. Jiang Xiu, however, was calm and composed. He didn't dodge or move. Master Li, do you think Mr. Jiang is a match for a god? Xie Ting was very nervous. She knew Jiang Xiu's ability. He could kill people with a raise of his hand. His medical skills were also very good. He was a demigod. Li Chengji said, not likely. Mr. Jiang was very famous. Whether it was martial arts or magic, it was said that he was a demigod. But the golden giant in front of them was beyond their imagination. Mu San of the Jin family was on the demigod list, but he couldn't even take one hit. He was beaten until he vomited blood and knelt on the ground to beg for mercy. It was inconceivable that such a deity existed in this world. Is it a golden Protoss? Jiang Xiu raised his head and looked over. His divine body was faintly emitting a bronze color. The golden god clan's entire body looked like it was made of gold. Their divine bodies were as hard as gold, and their strength was boundless. Furthermore, the brighter the color of the golden god clan's body, the stronger they were. He had seen the golden god clan's experts before. The one in front of them was far from it. Even the bronze color hadn't faded. It was only the first form. After the bronze faded, it would be silver. After the silver faded, one would be a true golden Protoss. He slowly raised his right hand. The gray pattern on it lit up. Not only that, it seemed to appear and gather in the void. At this moment, the true face of spiritual cultivation was completely revealed. Boom! His long hair flew up. His face changed. His pupils turned pitch black, and the wind and sand around him surged. What? At this moment, Jiang Xiu was like a god. He was so handsome that the girl's eyes almost fell out. He was so handsome that no one could have friends. However, they saw Jiang Xiu slowly raise his hand, and the huge fist was actually stopped in its original position. The next scene was unforgettable for everyone present. Grabbing the golden titan, Jiang Xiu swung it with one hand. Oh my god, the golden titan was hundreds of meters tall. It was unknown how heavy it was, but he swung it like a fire stick. This scene lit candles on everyone's faces. Enlighten the world. There were no words that could describe the shock of witnessing this scene. The golden giant, which was hundreds of meters tall, was being swung around like an invincible wind-fire wheel. They could only curse out loud. At this moment, the golden titan seemed to be weightless. Whoosh! The golden titan was thrown out by Jiang Xiu. Ayo! The golden titan let out a heart-wrenching roar. If one were to put themselves in Jiang Xiu's shoes, his heart would also break down. Anyone who was thrown out would also break down. Boom! The golden titan that was just thrown out suddenly fell from the sky at a terrifying speed. It defied the laws of physics and smashed into the desert. Everyone was very confused about what was going on. The golden titan should have been thrown in a parabola. What's going on? All the doubts turned into shock and were stuck in their throats. Jiang Xiu, who was still on the ground a second ago, was now above the golden titan. He stepped on the golden titan's body. The golden titan was stomped down from the sky. Is he still a human? Mu San was dumbfounded and stood there in a daze. He almost wanted to roar. "Mr. Jiang, this is Mr. Jiang from Jiangnan. Do you see him?" Seeing this scene, Li Chengji was very excited. Above the gods. "Old professor, do you see it? Do you see it?" At this time, Professor Su was completely dumbfounded. He actually saw a scene that was like a myth in front of him. What was more ironic was that this person was his student. What was above the gods? Of course, it was also a god. He's a god? The eyes of those who had offended Zhang Xiu before, as well as the surviving bandits, bulged. The disdain, contempt, doubt, regret, and annoyance from before all turned into shock. However, there were some people who, after feeling shocked, actually felt a surge of anger rush to their hearts. If he's so powerful, why didn't he say so earlier? Boom! Dividing metal into boundaries. Zhang Xiu's kick was so powerful that it showed a heaven-defying power. The divine body, which could not even be hit by bullets, was forcibly stomped by him and burst open. With an incomparably terrifying momentum, the Golden Titan sank down. After the Golden Titan sank into the body of the Golden Titan, there was the sound of mountain rocks cracking. The Golden Titan was forcibly penetrated by him. He went straight to the center of the Golden Titan's heart. After chanting and pasting a talisman on the position of the heart, he rushed out of the Golden Titan's body with a bang, bringing with him a few pieces of broken gold. "You!" The Golden Titan clutched its chest in pain. Its indifferent eyes showed a look of horror. Kneel or die. Chapter 165. Under the shocked gazes of everyone, Zhang Xiu stood with his hands behind his back. His eyes were cold and his hair fluttered in the wind. At this moment, his strength caused the hearts of everyone present to suffer a strong impact. Behind him, the Golden Giant, who was hundreds of meters tall, let out a painful roar. He clutched his chest hard. Not only had his heart been pierced by Zhang Xiu, but Zhang Xiu had also planted a talisman seed in it. Once he cast a spell, the Golden Giant's fate would be unimaginable. In terms of realm, the Golden Giant was a god while Zhang Xiu was a demigod. If it were anyone else, they would have no chance of winning. However, Zhang Xiu was the sect master of Tianqing School. He had lost more than 3,000 years of cultivation, but he knew too many spells. Enlighten the mountains and rivers could dispel the Golden Giant's weight. Divide metal and transform could break the Golden Giant's physical defense. These two techniques were both rare techniques. In fact, only those who had reached the level of Divine King could possibly comprehend their profound mysteries, yet he was able to use them so casually. It felt like using a max-level skill in a level 1 novice village. It felt like he was using cheats. If he wasn't still a demigod, he wouldn't need to use his divine power to cast these two spells. Some spells couldn't be cast by Protoss, some spells could be cast by gods but not by immortals, and some spells could be cast by immortals. These two spells could be cast by immortals. Boom boom. The Golden Giant couldn't bear the pain in his heart and knelt down. The giant knelt down. His body was huge and his weight was shocking. The ground shook as if it was about to collapse. The talisman was stuck in his heart, constantly emitting a white light. He still didn't know what kind of talisman it was, but it made him feel incomparably terrified. Once the power contained in the talisman really erupted, it might completely destroy him. "Please spare my life, exalted God." The Golden Giant actually knelt down and begged for mercy. This was unbelievable. Mu Sen concluded that Zhang Xiu was not only a demigod, but also a god. He could not believe that there was such a person in the world today. The incredible divine powers he saw just now were rare in the entire Hua nation. He had never seen anyone more powerful than Zhang Xiu. Looking at Zhang Xiu, everyone present could no longer remain calm. "Mr. Zhang? Is this Mr. Zhang from Jiangnan?" The bandits finally realized how strong Zhang Xiu was. He was not someone that a few machine guns could deal with. Sang Bao felt a chill run down his spine. He actually wanted to snatch his water. Jiang Xiu stood there with an indifferent expression, but the fear in everyone's hearts did not dissipate. Instead, it grew stronger. He was so terrifying. Suddenly, an angry voice rang out, "Jiang Xiu, if you're so powerful, why didn't you make a move earlier?" Zhou Yinru's beautiful eyes were filled with anger. "Why didn't you help us when we were attacked by the bandits? So many people died for nothing. These lives are all your responsibility." Zhou Yinru's anger erupted like a volcano. She felt that Jiang Xiu had gone too far. He could have stopped the bandits, but he did nothing. This female student. Does Mr. Jiang have the obligation to save you? What right do you have to criticize him? Li Chengji was not trying to suck up to Jiang Xiu. In this world, you can be a righteous person, but don't use your morals to blackmail others. Moreover, Li Chengji had seen how the bandits had isolated Jiang Xiu along the way. Jiang Xiu's eyes swept over, bringing with them a cold glint. So, he raised his hand, and that elder from the Jin clan who was smoking a pipe did not even have the slightest chance to react. His whole body had already been cut into two by Jiang Xiu's qi, his head separated from his body. Fresh blood splattered all over Zhou Yinru's face. Gasp! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. This skill, Zhou Yinru's body trembled. The hot blood on her face made her feel like a bucket of ice water had been poured from the sky. She froze on the spot. Her breathing was rapid and her eyes were about to pop out. If Jiang Xiu had aimed at him just now, he would have ended up like this old man from the Jin clan, with his head separated from his body. The hot blood and the cold corpse made Zhou Yinru realize from the bottom of her heart what kind of person Jiang Xiu was. Her legs turned to jelly and she couldn't stand anymore. She fell to the ground. "I didn't kill you today because we were classmates. Otherwise, you would have ended up like this person." Zhou Yinru nodded in horror. The Jin family members were depressed. If you want to teach someone a lesson, do you have to kill someone from the Jin family? Moreover, the one who was killed was one of the elders of the Jin family. This was an unexpected disaster. They glared angrily at Jiang Xiu as if they wanted to fight him to the death. Mu Sen's face was ashen. "Mr. Jiang, what do you mean by this? Why did you kill an elder of the Jin family for no reason? You've gone too far." "Innocent." Jiang Xiu's eyes swept over coldly. "Your Jin clan sent out so many elites to chase me all the way to the heart of the desert. Don't tell me that you just want to meet me." Mu Sen. Their original intention was to come to the desert to kill Jiang Xiu and avenge Jin Shi. But who would have thought that Jiang Xiu was so powerful? For a moment, they didn't know whether to take revenge or not. They couldn't advance or retreat. Jiang Xiu said, "Now, do you still think he's innocent? Not only him, you dared to bring people into the desert to kill me. You should have been mentally prepared. You should have heard that I, Zhang Luoxia, have always been ruthless." The Jin family's faces all changed. Mu Sen's face was gloomy. "Zhang Luoxia, you may be able to defeat the Golden Giant, but you may not be able to defeat me. Do you really want to fight me to the death?" As he spoke, his spirit slowly changed. His entire face withered and made a cracking sound. His face soon became like a dead tree. His neck, body, and arms all seemed to have turned into wood. Everyone's vital blood vessels, even their hearts and lungs, seemed to have disappeared. His entire body emitted a faint green glow. Semi-god wood-type evolved body? Jiang Xiu smiled. This person was much more powerful than Wang Jianji of the Wang family. When he completely turned into wood, he would become the green wood Protoss and a true god. He wasn't too far away. He had already walked the last few hundred meters of the 100,000-mile-long journey. "You're knowledgeable." Mu Sen's face became very stiff. Even his voice changed. It was unclear and sounded a little like the boundless divine language. "Now, do you still want to fight to the death with my Jin family?" His tone was full of confidence. Jiang Xiu said, "You're really stupid. The one who will die can only be you." Mu Sen took a deep breath and said, Then let's give it a try. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged toward Jiang Xiu. He leaped into the air and punched out. His wood body was comparable to ironwood. Jiang Xiu didn't retreat. Instead, he advanced. His speed was much faster than Mu Sen's. At the same time, he waved his hand and a wave of energy whistled out. Mu Sen actually took this attack head-on. At the same time, his fist was already in front of Jiang Xiu. His body was attacked by the wave of energy. His chest exploded, revealing his withered wood-like body. However, his vitals weren't injured. It could even be said that it was only a flesh wound. Too hard, too hard. Jiang Xiu praised from the bottom of his heart. What was the hardest material on the immortal martial continent? It was actually wood. There were many divine trees that were harder than stone and metal. Among the divine objects that were hard to resist, 3 of them were wood. Some wood-type bodies were known for their hardness to counter all kinds of sword chi and blades. And Jiang Xiu not being able to break through his defense was also within his expectations. He purely wanted to try and test his own divine power at the same time. After all, he wasn't a god now. Moreover, he didn't cultivate the sword. He only had energy, so the power was naturally much weaker. Haha, you forgot Zhang Luoxia. I gave you a chance just now, but you didn't take it. It's too late now. Seeing that Jiang Xiu couldn't break through his defense, Mu Sen was overjoyed. His fist was already in front of Jiang Xiu. Umph. Jiang Xiu coldly snorted. He stretched out a finger and tapped his fist. Jiang Xiu's strongest point was actually the physical strength that he himself didn't care about. In other words, brute force. But to block Mu Sen's heavy fist with a single finger was enough to make people's teeth drop. But what made people even more dumbfounded was that Mu Sen suddenly screamed in terror. Jiang Xiu's lips curled into a smile. The price of ignorance. Ah! Mu Sen's mouth suddenly issued a miserable scream, but it wasn't because he was trampled to death. Instead, Mu Sen's entire body suddenly burst into flames. It was as if a tree had caught fire, and this fire wasn't an ordinary fire. Big brother. Mu Sen burned very quickly. In the blink of an eye, he was burned to ashes. Dead, Mu Sen, who was ranked on the demigod rankings, died just like that? He was burned to death by Jiang Xiu with a single finger. Chapter 166. Everyone looked at Jiang Xiu in shock. How could this person be so powerful? He could burn a demigod to death with a single finger? This was not because of Jiang Xiu. It was because of the curse that they had just been cursed. Mu Sen had also been cursed, and the curse had taken effect. It should not have happened so quickly, but this was a fire curse. After Mu Sen turned into wood gave birth to fire, which meant that the curse had taken effect earlier. Run, run quickly. When the Jin family saw that their demigod had been killed like a baby, they fled in all directions. Seeing them run away, Jiang Xiu had no intention of chasing after them. However, Li Chengji asked, Mr. Jiang, are you going to let them go just like that? Jiang Xiu said, they've been cursed. They won't survive. Only then did everyone remember that everyone present had been cursed. No one could survive. For a moment, everyone present fell silent. Mr. Jiang, you're so powerful. You must have a way, right? At this moment, Jiang Xiu was like a god in their eyes. The surviving robbers, Professor Su, and the students of Imperial College all looked at him eagerly, hoping that Jiang Xiu could lift the curse and save their lives. Jiang Xiu said, I just said that the curse can be lifted by going to another world. Professor Su was full of doubts and wanted answers from Jiang Xiu. He wanted to ask Jiang Xiu if he was really a god. He also wanted to ask Jiang Xiu where his power came from, but he did not dare to. Moreover, they were mainly thinking of a way to lift the curse now. Jiang Xiu, what does going to another world mean? Jiang Xiu said, it means what it means. What else can it mean? Professor Su said, How can people go to another world? Zhang Xiu said, Death. Everyone present looked bitter. If death could lift the curse, then it was no different from not being lifted. They would die anyway. Xieting said, Mr. Zhang, please save our lives. Zhang Xiu, please save us. For the sake of being classmates. Although they didn't understand what Zhang Xiu meant, Zhang Xiu was so calm that they thought Zhang Xiu must have a way. Otherwise, even a god couldn't be so calm in the face of death. Who wasn't afraid of death? Zhang Xiu pondered for a moment and said, Go find some gravel, some withered grass, and some firewood. Everyone was overjoyed when they heard Zhang Xiu's words. They followed Zhang Xiu's instructions and went to search for the items. Some curses were unsolvable, and such curses were regarded as forbidden curses. The cost of casting the curse was also enormous. Most of the time, one had to pay with their own life. Most of the curses were solvable, but it depended on one's strength. The wrath of the Yin-Yang fire god was about to crawl to the other shore of hell, to fall into eternal damnation in another world. This was still unsolvable for mortals, but in Zhang Xiu's eyes, there was a path to survival. It was enough to fool the curse. It didn't take long for those people to find everything. He asked the giant golden god to dig a hole in the ground. This was too easy for him. He just had to squat down and fish, and he could fish out a hole big enough to bury everyone. Jump down if you want to live. The hole was 2 or 3 meters deep. Li Chengji, Bandit, and the others jumped down without hesitation. Zhang Xiu didn't have to spend so much effort to kill them, but the teachers and students were hesitant. Professor Su asked, What are you going down for? Zhang Xiu said, Bury them alive. Everyone present couldn't help but gasp. Bury them alive? Professor Su's expression was ugly. Student Zhang Xiu, are you joking? Zhang Xiu didn't reply. Hurry up if you want to go down. If not, I'll have to seal the soil. Li Chengji vaguely felt something, but he couldn't seem to figure it out. However, he trusted Zhang Xiu. What kind of existence was a demigod? Professor, you'd better come down quickly. Do you want to wait for the curse to take effect? Professor Su and the other experts looked at each other and began to jump down one after another. Seeing that everyone had gone down, Zhang Xiu said, Put the stones and straws on top of you. Everyone didn't understand, but they did as they were told. Seal the soil. The golden giant's underling grabbed the soil and filled the hole. The people inside couldn't help but scream. Anyone who was buried alive would scream. Some people even cried. It felt as if they were really buried alive. Perhaps at this moment, they really felt that death was approaching. After burying them, Zhang Xiu drew a huge talisman around the private hole. Then, he lit the firewood in the northwest corner of the hole. This was the most superficial trick to deceive the heavens. When the firewood was extinguished, it was equivalent to the lights of everyone inside being extinguished. Of course, they were dead. The curse would naturally be lifted. Get them out. Hurry up. The giant golden god didn't dare to be slow. He naturally understood the principle behind Zhang Xiu's actions. It was nothing more than deceiving the heavens and making them think that everyone underground was dead. Even their corpses were left in the wilderness with weeds and gravel on their bodies. Then, if everyone was dead, the curse of the fire god would naturally be lifted. He dug up the soil and caught these people one by one. They were only the size of his palm. They were very mini. Ba ba. Their mouths were full of sand. This is it? Zhang Xiu said, Look at the curse on your arms. Everyone raised their wrists and looked. They were all overjoyed. The flame patterns on their arms had all disappeared. Some people's patterns had been burned to their elbows. Now they were all gone. It's really gone. That's great. I don't have to die. I don't have to die. Li Chengji and his son walked over and said sincerely, Thank you, Mr. Zhang, for saving our lives. He was sincere. If it wasn't for Zhang Xiu, they definitely wouldn't have been able to escape this disaster. Forget it. Xie was also overjoyed. But at the same time, a trace of sadness flashed in her eyes. This curse was also used by the ancestors of the ancient desert city to stop foreign invaders. Zhang Xiu asked, Miss Xie, where is the entrance to the ancient desert city? Xie knew that Zhang Xiu's goal was the ancient desert city. He wouldn't give up so easily. She shook her head and said, I don't know. I really don't know. Zhang Xiu saved her father and now he saved her. She said, I've come to the desert so many times to go in, but I haven't found the entrance. Zhang Xiu said, It's okay. Golden Giant, where is the entrance to the ancient desert city you're guarding? The Golden Giant pondered. His purpose of living here was to protect the ancient desert city. If he said it, wouldn't it violate the meaning of his existence? Zhang Xiu said, What? If you don't want to say it, don't forget that your life is in my hands. As soon as he said this, the talisman in the Golden Giant's body suddenly lit up. The Golden Giant frowned in pain and said, The ancient desert city is the place I'm guarding. You can kill me, but I can't say it. Zhang Xiu said, You keep your word. In fact, with Zhang Xiu's ability, it wasn't difficult for him to find the entrance here. He said, Even if you don't tell me, I know that the ancient desert city is buried underground. The Golden Giant didn't say anything. Zhang Xiu continued, Don't forget how you appeared. At this point, the Golden Giant's expression changed. He had emerged from the ground. After Zhang Xiu finished speaking, he walked forward. The people behind looked at each other and quickly followed. They had no water or food now. If they stayed here, they would die. The only way to survive was to find the ancient desert city. There was water and food inside. Of course, there were also many ancient books and countless gold and silver treasures inside. Moreover, from the looks of this Golden Giant guarding it, there might be a huge secret hidden inside. Not long after they walked, they saw a stone staircase leading underground. The Golden Giant's heart was crumbling. This mark was revealed when he came out. Otherwise, it would be deeply hidden in the depths of the desert and would be impossible to find. The reason he came out was because someone had killed people here. Fresh blood once again stained this place. This made him extremely angry, but he didn't expect that. Come, let's go down. Xie followed behind Zhang Xiu with an excited expression. After coming so many times, it turned out that the entrance to the ancient desert city was 10 meters underground. Who would have thought that? Mr. Zhang, be careful. According to the records of my ancestors, it's very dangerous inside. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.